Hey Sandals Church men, and welcome to the men's Unconference. Hey Sandals Church men, welcome to the men's Unconference. My name's Andrew Bogenwright. I'm the men's pastor here at Sandals Church, and we're gonna do something different today. I'm gonna introduce you to some people in my community. We talk about community all the time. We talk about being real. We're just gonna show you what it looks like. So I want you to kind of jump in the van with us. We're heading up the mountain to have a fun day, so come on, let's hang out. You guys aren't gonna have to stop and go to the restroom on the way up, Adam, right?
No, I just went. I'm good.
You girls took care of your bladder.
Do you have a walnut bladder?
Everything's good.
Coffee runs through it.
No pooping. We're not stopping to poop.
movie.
No, I've already done that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
it's right there all over the sidewalk.
Adam
Right.
probably
I typically
You probably pooped like 3 times already.
Well, no, I only
You
poop
think so?
once, but
Okay.
I usually poop 2 to 3, so I might have one brewing. Just like y'all want a coffee.
When I used to run a lot, I'd have to make sure I went before I'd go out and go running, because you get that mid-run urge. Like,
Did you ever have a blowout?
I never did, but I had a guy I ran with that did. We ran back to his house and he couldn't even make it inside. It's amazing how the key doesn't work when you got to poop. It's like all of a sudden you're just that
totally.
Yeah, his stress and whatever else went through the roof, and he's like,
Dude, I got a poop story. So
There we go. I knew it was coming.
It was my senior year of high school.
Yeah.
I was training for soccer, and my buddies were cross-country runners. So we ran 4.5 miles up to the main road, all uphill, and we start heading back down. And as you're heading down, man, it's like you're being jarred each step.
Yeah.
And I realized, dude, this is diarrhea, because I'm eating camp food. And there's no way I'm making it 4.5 miles all the way down. So I just pull off to the side.
No, man.
And I'm like, guys, I gotta go. Can you give me a little space? And
Give me a little space. Make
so
some room.
I go, and it's diarrhea.
That's
It is
disgusting.
full on. And then I'm like, now what? I didn't consider, how am I gonna clean this up?
Right.
So I took my shirt off, took care of business.
Are you kidding
and
me?
I just left it there
Oh,
on
my
the side of the
word.
road, dude.
That's awesome.
It was awesome. What does your guys' morning routine look like? What do you do in the morning?
So, are we gonna do this all day? Jump in
please
first?
go ahead. Please go ahead.
Okay, because I thought I was the
Age
hype man.
before
So I usually
Age
wake
before
up.
Oh, there it is. Aurelio's
And,
first.
Yeah, we'll just let you guys argue.
must be an 8.
So Monday, Wednesday, Friday are gym days, and right now is a lot of fun because the kids aren't going to school. So Monday, Wednesday, Friday up at 5, gym at 5:30, home by 6. That'll be usually
by
when
6?
I'm home by 6.
So a half-hour workout?
It's a half hour. It's
Dang.
a solid nonstop for a half hour, and then that'll usually where I'll do my reading. I kind of just catch my breath because it's the only quiet I'll have for the day.
Do you,
whatever the day dictates?
If you don't do that morning routine, does it throw you off?
Yeah,
Yeah, same, man.
yeah. And the hardest thing I think about coming out of our shells right now and coming back to work has been trying to reestablish that routine. Because everything was so thrown off, you're just at home all day,
Yeah.
and there was no routine. It was, I'm on the phone, I'm on a Zoom call, I'm on a this, I'm on a that,
Yeah.
and now when I don't do my routine, completely throws me off.
So I'm not naturally a morning person. I'm a classic night owl. But so I struggle getting going in the mornings.
How late do you stay
Especially-
up?
Well, I don't actually stay up that late most nights. I've had to, by force and
Yeah.
family and kids and stuff, I've
Sure.
adjusted to being more of a morning person in the past. I don't
Right.
stay up super late much anymore. So as a practice, I open up the Bible app and I look at the verse of the day.
Yeah. It's good.
Because in the Bible, the idea of giving the first fruits of your money,
Yep.
tithing, it's just a way of giving my very first moment
Yeah.
That's good, man.
to the Lord. And so typically, maybe after a poop and getting coffee
we're back.
started, I only over the last couple few years, I actually this is almost every day now. Again, it wasn't always that way. Not trying to sound super spiritual, but I will literally get on my knees. And so I want to start off each day with gratitude for the gift.
Amen.
It's a
Amen.
gift or a
Amen.
grace for that day, and then I end the prayer with 2 different things. One, and this is how liturgical or routine it is. It's I can recite it for you. I say, help me to walk in humility today, as with John the Baptist, less of me, more of you. May my words, my deeds, and my character prepare the way of the Lord, pointing others to you, Jesus. That's the prayer of humility. And then the last thing I pray is, thank you for loving me first. May my love for you, myself, and others increase in response. In Jesus' name, amen. So
No wonder you're more spiritual than me.
yeah, and then my reading is typically one chapter from the New Testament, and then I'll finish my reading by reading a psalm out loud. I'll just read one psalm a day out loud. Just, it doesn't matter. I'm not reading it to anybody else. Nobody else is around typically.
Yeah.
Sometimes my kids get to see it, which I kind of like, that they're seeing their dad get in the Word.
Sure.
But yeah, that's mine. And typically, I don't. If I'm reading a chapter a day in the New Testament, I don't. I'll alternate back to the Gospels between other books, because I think it was Dallas Willard, philosophy professor at your alma mater, USC. He said, "I'm always reading a chapter from the Gospels because I never want to get away from Jesus."
Yeah, it's good.
And so,
good.
so typically it's a Gospel or another book, and then I'll alternate back and forth a chapter from the New Testament. So,
Nice. Well, it's good.
You made me feel really guilty because I'm usually rushing out the door to the gym.
well, I struggle with punctuality. You don't need to amen that, Andrew.
Amen. I got to.
So I'm always hustling after all that. But anyway, how about you, Jeff?
Yeah, I'm always the first person to wake up in our house. So generally, I don't know, sometime between 5:15 and 6:15. Yeah, the first thing I do is I get up. Actually, I don't use the restroom. I don't take a poop like my brother Adam here, but my body's not ready yet. It ain't ready yet.
That's okay.
But but I literally go straight downstairs and I get my coffee. That's like literally the first thing I do. And so I would say generally I find myself on my recliner. I have a recliner in one of our rooms downstairs, and I say a really quick prayer. Sometimes I miss it, but just thanking the Lord for the day, and then I start reading whatever I'm reading, in my devotional type, morning time. And I to be honest, so a couple things. One, I would say there's usually about day, maybe 2 days, I don't do it. I miss it. I just something's held my attention.
Sorry to interrupt you.
No, that's
Look
good.
at that Bronco.
That is a sick Ford Bronco.
That's what Becca wants. She would love a Bronco like that.
What is that? Like an 82?
It is a Bronco, right?
Yeah, because
It's
it
a
says
Ford
Ford
Bronco.
off to the right.
Yeah, no, I see that, but
Oh dang.
okay.
When it comes to my devotionals or what I'm reading, I am all over the place. I'm like, man, is that my Enneagram 7? Because I'm just all over the place, and I just gotta have, nothing is really consistent. I got to be here and there, and so I jump around from devotional to devotional all the time. Obviously, right now though, I'm in Proverbs, which is so flipping good. But yeah, I would say I'm kind of all over the place, guys, and I miss my time. There's times I just miss reading the Word. I just really do. You know what's actually interesting? The times when I have been most inconsistent is when I've been in ministry, like pastoring. Like I've worked at university, some other places, and those times I'm in the Word every single day. But
what do you think that's about? What do you think's behind that?
honestly, I think honestly, not to spiritualize it, but I think part of it is the devil. I think he knows hey, I got to be on my game spiritually because I'm pastoring, I'm ministering to so many individuals, and so my pantry, the food is just constantly coming out. But he knows if my pantry ain't full, then I can't. And it's just every single time I've been pastoring or in ministry, it's been inconsistent, and so I have to directly and be intentional about my time. And I also think that in ministry you're moving so much. You might think oh wow, I'm already kind of in it. Yeah. I don't need to be in it.
I'll absorb from Adam.
Right.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah, right. Exactly.
As Adam
look, there it is.
His holiness coming out.
That's my morning time right there. Thank you.
Let me see those red marks on his knees.
Right.
In his forehead.
You're right. You, Andrew.
Yeah, so after the coffee morning poop thing,
Of course.
Yeah, I usually I got a little spot in the front room that I just nestle in with my Bible and coffee and journal, and The journal's
In
actually
your cultivate gear? Is that
My cultivate-
you nestle in? You
I
have a
nestle
fuzzy
in.
Those
blanket?
sweatpants are comfortable.
Fuzzy
Tho-
hat.
Those oversized mediums,
fuzzy blanket.
they are more like a regular XL.
Sorry, you were just like, it's the Instagram post of the chick, like the basic.
Like you lay the journal out perfectly.
Yeah.
Right.
That was the image
With
you
a
were painting for
yeah.
us.
He
like-
sits a,
Coffee steaming.
It's
he
not.
lights a
that-
candle.
No, but I do
Yeah.
some of the things like I try and have a prayer time on my knees.
Amen.
Just to like you said, just humility. That's a newer practice, maybe the last year and a half.
Yeah.
I try and do silence, but man, I get
Yep.
so distracted.
Distracted,
Like
yep.
I actually do better when I'm like on a walk or something, which I don't do enough. But
Yeah.
yeah, I just get distracted and my thoughts kind of go all over the place.
Right.
But yeah, I work to try and have some silence, and then just have some time reading, praying, journaling. And the journaling's pretty new for me. I don't know if you guys do that, but I tried every January for like 11 years in a row. I tried to journal, and so you see all these like entries from January. Maybe I made it to February one year, and it wasn't until I became a parent that I started journaling. As I like just had so much more that I was like wrestling with,
Wow.
and because we adopted our boys older, so they already came. Like I wasn't just like I'm tired because my baby's crying. It was like
Right.
I'm having conversations with my 7-year-old that are really heavy, and like I don't know how to process it. So I just started journaling regularly. And
Got you.
Quick shout out to San Bernardino, Sandals Church, San Bernardino.
Yeah.
oh, we just passed by.
Yeah.
Nice.
SB, the Purdue.
Be in the house.
Right there.
Yeah, so that's kind of my thing, and then I take the dog for a walk or
Yeah.
run, and then head to the gym. So
Man.
yeah, I start pretty early as well, like 5:30, and I like to get the stuff that I want to make sure I do done, because I know it'll get lost if I don't do it first thing in the morning.
Yeah.
The day will be busy. I'm not going to
Sure.
feel like praying, reading, going to the gym or
Yeah,
whatever.
sure, sure.
That all gets lost later. So
Man, I wish I could. Seems like all you guys do some kind of like physical like workout. I don't. Well,
this guy, I get Adam to the gym
I'm
like
hot or
once a
cold,
month.
man. It's
You're
all or
not-
nothing.
Average of once a month. It's like 4 days one week, and then like 4 months later it'll
There
be
have been other
like
seasons.
four days
I've
that
had my
week.
seasons.
yeah.
Yeah,
Hey, I've had seasons.
you've had seasons.
I trained for an Ironman,
You
and then
did.
I fell off the wagon for a year and a half.
or two.
Or
It's two.
two.
Yeah, it's two.
I guess it's two.
But Jeff, you have like the just natural physique,
You
right?
know what?
Like,
Again, all glory to God.
You showed up right at the start of COVID.
I did,
That's
and that was
so-
like
you
that,
brought it.
Yes.
Did you bring it to Riverside, Jeff?
No.
bro. Yeah, I feel like you guys just dove right in and like made yourselves available. And
Yeah.
I mean, I met you when I rescued you.
Now, that was,
Yeah.
Hey,
Remember that when your car got
Remember
lost?
we I don't think it really knows.
was
I
it
heard-
the old
I heard
Chris
that
Farley
story.
skit?
We
He's like interviewing Michael Jordan. He's like, remember that time you like flew from the free throw line in the dunk contest, and then they made that logo out of you? And Michael Jordan would be like, yeah, I remember that. He'd be like, that was cool, right?
That was awesome.
my wife
Mental
will not
abuse to
allow me
humans.
to talk to my kids about anything academic.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Dad said it doesn't really matter.
I mean, honestly, I'm just like, wow, when I think about everything I learned in school. Okay, that's not true. But for the most part, I'm like, man, it didn't retain. It didn't stay.
Mm-hmm.
And look how God is blessing.
Mm-hmm.
Praise the Lord.
Amen, brother.
Thank you.
But you were talking earlier about how you had like all the gifts, though.
Not all of them. But
Oh, just
with
Just all the major ones?
But God has,
like
proud of.
74% of 92% of them.
again, all glory to God.
68%.
That's right. That's one way of putting it.
So you're gifted in physique, gifted with a manly low voice. What else?
Just the math ain't on the list.
The math is
We
not
can't
on.
we can't win them all.
But I'm a good fake it till you make it
Mm.
kind of guy.
That's like our vision at our church.
Yeah,
Right.
just fake it till you make it.
That falls right in.
Right, seriously.
This feels like confession time.
That sign said "My happy place."
Oh,
Let's talk about where your happy place is.
my happy place?
Yeah, where's your happy place,
Dude.
Andrew?
If I can be real, my
Was
happy
this-
place was
Is this a real thing?
my wife coming off the DL last night. You know what I'm saying?
No, can you?
What's
no,
the D? What
we
do you
don't
need? Sit
understand.
down a little?
So the DL is a baseball term that means
Oh, you
the
actually didn't understand.
No, I didn't.
I was kidding.
No.
You don't know what? Oh my.
What's it actually? What does it stand for again?
Disabled list.
Disabled list. There you go.
I'm
Not that
okay.
she's disabled.
Even
but
if you didn't know
I'm
what the
experiencing
DL
the
is,
DL
couldn't
right
you
now.
contextually like interpret what that meant?
So there's a
She
time.
came off the DL last night. You don't know about the DL.
There's a time
it's
each
okay.
month.
I did.
There's a time each
So
month.
brothers, the download.
Oh, down low.
DL.
Okay.
There's a time each month where
Yeah.
you're not, able to.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, it depends on what you're into.
And so I thought it was gonna be tonight, and so I was like, hoping for that.
Right.
And it was a day early, man. So, speaking of happy place, I'm feeling good. I grew up
Neither does my stomach.
going to the mountains. Are you guys feeling sick? I didn't ask you.
I'm actually okay. I'm actually okay.
Yeah?
We're doing
Yeah,
okay.
surprisingly.
That's what I'm looking
Dude,
at.
I
How
would
we
get
go?
sick. So we had to
Weird,
go on
dude.
this 25-mile road that had 639 curves. Okay?
What?
Yeah,
No,
639
not
to get up to the
because
cabin.
you counted.
No, because that's what they told us.
Man, okay, it's worth that.
I could never have counted that because I was barfing every time I went up there. I would take cherry Dramamine back
Yeah.
when you had to like drink it.
Right,
Oh,
yeah.
Dude, I would barf that stuff all over the side of the road. We tried and put like chocolate in it. It did not make it better. It
I
was
think
awful.
I think dudes that get motion sickness aren't dudes.
What?
You're a girl.
Hey,
Dude, like my stomach, I ain't ever thrown up
I
from
feel
motion
like-
sickness, man. I got a stomach of steel.
I feel like
Because I'll literally-
using a female to call
Really
something bad is
Yeah.
I know.
really
Sexist.
inappropriate.
Oh.
Good job, dude.
Thank
Dude.
you. I would agree.
Like
I
you
didn't
throw
even-
like a girl. What if girls throw better than you?
Yeah.
Well, Adam, you actually have a good arm.
Aw,
Yeah.
thanks, man.
Yeah.
Um,
For a compact guy,
Compact.
you have a
That's-
pretty
Compact.
strong throwing arm.
We pull into Shawnee, Oklahoma on Kickapoo Street.
Kickapoo.
I'm not kidding you. Kickapoo.
Okay.
Kickapoo.
I got a cousin
And
named Kickapoo.
there is I'm not kidding you, there's a Native American powwow happening. Okay? And so there's this stop thing, and I think it's a DUI check.
Yeah.
And I pull up, I'm driving, my parents are in the car with me, and I roll down the window, and they say, "Well, hello, sir, we're doing a DUI check."
What?
And I said, "Look, I'm trying to
DL
not be
check.
disrespectful to the cop."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Excuse me?" He's like, "DL check." And it was a stop, like a checkpoint to make sure you have your driver's license.
Oh,
Right.
DL. Like
DL,
that- you were
yeah.
saying
Driver's
DUI,
license.
DUI or something.
Yeah.
Did you ever have to do those, Aurelio, when you were law enforcement?
DUI.
No, they were volunteer overtime. I just never signed up for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot of people don't know that there's actually a rhythm to who they're going to stop and talk to.
Huh.
Like they'll just randomly pick numbers. Yeah, we'll stop
Every
every
sixth
fourth.
or- yeah.
Every sixth.
Just make it random.
Yeah, every this
As long
hour.
as it's not every fifth.
Yeah, dude. The numbers.
Or
those
every
five.
10th.
Hey, well, guys, we're here, man. Let's have some fun.
All right.
On the mountain.
Need to get some coffee.
What?
Yeah. Avery, what's up, dude?
On now.
Hey.
Hey.
You got
We need some caffeine,
I got some good stuff for
Very
you
nice
guys.
boy.
Yes.
Hey, hipster, you gonna hook us up with some caffeine?
Oh Lord, have mercy. Yes, yes, I am.
Ready, man.
This is a pour over. So
Oh,
you guys, I know you
pour over.
guys don't really know what that means. This isn't your Keurig though. This is high quality. Okay, I know you guys wake up, pop a K cup in, and think that's good.
This,
But
I
this
have a
is-
question.
this
Does
is-
this take more time than like a regular cup of coffee?
oh yeah, this takes about
Okay.
5 minutes to brew. On the
Because usually people
farthest
are
end.
older like us. We don't have that time because we're working.
See, but
But this generation, right?
no,
I mean,
we have.
You got time.
I don't have time. I
Okay.
got full-time college. I got part-time job.
Oh,
I got
well,
friends
oh,
and
praise the Lord.
friends and social life that I,
I don't
try to
usually hear
have.
people like your age say stuff like that. Praise the Lord.
But
God
I
is
am
good.
willing. I'm willing to take 5
Yes.
minutes out of my day to have a quality cup of coffee.
Okay.
And I'm going to start with a bloom.
A bloom.
It's real nice.
Like a flower?
Very
Very
like a flower. Very masculine. It's about 30 seconds.
Is this what a lot
just
of
to-
people your age do?
Like the
Oh
wildflowers.
yeah, this is
of the
so
spring.
common. So many
Because
people have
I'm
this.
just wanting some coffee.
No, yeah. Okay.
I haven't had any yet. I'm just waiting to get to it.
Okay, listen. It's good.
So
Sure.
I gotta wait 5 minutes, is what you're telling me.
Yeah. So it's
What's
just-
up, Don?
What's going on, you guys?
Hey, Don.
What's
What's up,
happening there?
We've
Just doing
got
some pour over.
a very special kind of coffee going on. It's a Gen Z
you guys want
version.
some coffee? Let me
Yes.
make
Yeah,
some
dude, hook us up, brother.
Come on.
This stuff is amazing.
What is it called?
It's chock full of nuts. Actually,
It already has a better name.
it has no nuts in it, but it was made in the 30s. And it
Yes,
stood the
that come
test of
on now.
time.
Yes,
So
come
it's
on.
amazing. Let me
You
make
weren't
some
around
of
in
this.
the 30s though, right?
I was not around.
All right,
in
cool.
the 30s. If you get in a big hurry, you can just put a little pinch between your cheek and gum.
Yeah.
Get you kind of started.
Don, I love you. Oh my God, look at that, straight in there. I love it.
Straight in there.
What's in this coffee? There's some special ingredient you were telling me about earlier.
Well, it's heavenly. I know that.
During World War II, coffee was rationed, so they put chicory in.
Okay.
And chicory was something like a coffee substitute.
Yeah.
And it smooths out the Arabica coffee beans or the Robusta coffee
Okay.
beans. Now they use Arabica coffee beans,
Yeah.
and it's much more smooth,
Okay.
but still very good. That stuff
know
will
about
carry
that.
you in. This will carry you out.
Come on, somebody.
Okay.
Do you know why I like coffee?
Like,
Because it makes me not grumpy in the morning. It wakes me up, gets me going, allows me to pray a little bit, maybe exercise.
Chillax.
Because otherwise, like, I feel like it's easy for me to get angry and grumpy if I don't, like, even afternoon coffee.
Right,
I'm kind of
sure,
addicted to both.
Sure.
Does anybody else, like,
I was
get
starting to
angry?
actually feel that from you, so I'm kind of glad we're about to drink some.
Yeah,
Because you
okay.
could probably settle down a little bit.
That actually, coffee has no effect on me like that. That doesn't make me angry.
Whoa.
Other things make me angry.
You're so
Coffee's
cool.
not supposed to make you angry. It's supposed
He's
to keep
saying
you from
take
being
the
angry.
edge off so that you're not.
Okay,
angry.
okay.
I mean, I think that anger tends to be a go-to. I don't know about you guys. Most guys I've met, I think anger is a go-to.
Yeah,
is that for
definitely.
you too? Even young guys?
Yeah, I think it looks a lot different though. Like in experiencing maybe how. I mean, I've seen you get angry plenty of times at me. No, I'm just kidding. It's fine. You're okay.
Oh, this is
You're all
good.
right.
No,
You're getting
we-
better.
This is
So we
real.
need this to happen.
He's working on it. He's working
Adam's
on
ready for this,
Oh,
right?
I get angry.
He's getting angry right now.
it. He's angry at the comment I made in front of his friends. I'll hear
I
about
have
it later.
coffee grinds in my lip.
I would say though it's the same. I think my generation in particular gets pretty angry, but over smaller things. I think we're easily offended, and really easily taken off like balance, taken off balance by a lot of things, because we're deep feelers. I feel like we're more in touch with our emotions, and that's not always in a healthy way. And so I think. Yeah, I think I see a lot of anger in my friends, a lot of anger just in general, just in the way I experience people. So yeah,
Do I need to do anything special to this cup? I mean, you made it.
you should smell it, maybe get some taste. I
swirl
put a little
and
less in
sniff.
yours on purpose just to see. But it's a
Sip, swish, spit.
Honor-
Is that how
honor
you drink
that.
this coffee?
honor
Where's the
that
creamer?
Yeah.
Anybody's got a creamer?
Seriously,
Oh,
yeah.
I can't do
Don't
this.
ruin
I
it.
cannot
Don't
this
do
without-
it. Don't.
I need some
I will
sugar.
try, but
I need some sugar,
ruining it.
Jesse.
This
You
is
put your
amazing.
finger in there?
Come on.
Hey, I'm gonna sip some of this first and then add
Yes.
creamer to it. Is that okay?
That's better. Because you want to pick up the notes of the coffee. So there's
Notes. Oh, I didn't know.
Yeah.
I didn't know it was playing something.
Is it serenading?
there should be some fruity flavors in it. The way the bean was processed.
So, John, what about your generation? Is anger a thing for?
Oh,
Because
definitely.
you're a boomer, which I don't know if you know about boomer, but my son tells me
Yeah.
like I'm a boomer if I mess up like typing something on my phone, boomer
my.
fingers,
Boomer fingers.
or if I say something like kind of
Thank you, sir.
old that I'm a boomer,
You are.
but I'm not a boomer. No, I'm a Gen X.
That
I'm
makes
Gen
you a
X.
boomer though. You just
So we
pass
gotta
X.
make the generation side by side.
Yeah. So yeah, boomers, we struggle with anger. I think every generation does. But we need to learn to contain ourselves. We need to learn to hold it back a little bit and listen more than we speak.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting. He said that a lot more emotional. As we're kind of like midway between both these generations. My dad's totally a boomer, and then I got kids, hang out with a lot of young folk, very emotional, like show no emotion.
Right.
So
Until
that's-
it
yeah,
breaks.
Until it breaks.
Right.
And then it's like the balloon popping.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think what I heard you say is that our generation has like the perfect balance
Amen. Amen.
between
I feel that.
Right.
Just
exactly.
finding it.
Yeah.
You know, but
So can you guys taste the difference if we mix them
Yeah,
up?
this one tastes like a racquetball. It's the best, when the can.
which one?
I will say, Avery,
nuts?
yours is a lot better.
Yeah, chocolate.
Let's go.
I mean, but yours is called chock full of nuts.
But I would still drink a 20-ounce cup of this in the morning.
Yeah.
Anything to
Absolutely,
get you started.
All right.
But I think,
I'm breaking the.
Oh my God.
Andrew, one
I
of the
wanna
things
drink this.
we've talked about before is when it comes to anger, it feels like for men, that's the only emotion we're allowed to display.
Yeah. It's
Or that's acceptable.
Yep.
Because otherwise you're a weak man or you're, thought less of. And so that, one of the things when I get to talk to guys, I go, man, there's real strength in being vulnerable because that it almost takes more courage to be able to be vulnerable than to be angry. Angry's easy. Again, it's the hardest thing about anger is coming back from it.
Yeah.
Because how do you repair that relationship with that person that you got
Yeah.
angry with?
Yeah, and I think that what you said is interesting because as I interact and see my generation, I think that anger has now become, you've heard the phrase toxic masculinity.
Yeah.
Any expression of healthy or unhealthy anger is toxic masculinity. And so guys feel like they're almost pressured to feel like this deep, maybe like romantic feeling in a romantic setting, or they feel like they have to feel joyful, or all these different like motions that aren't bad, but it's almost that anger, even righteous anger, has become something that's undesirable and not okay, because there's this stigma that there's toxic masculinity, and anger, like you said, has been associated, like men are easily angered, and so that's kind of associated with being a man, unfortunately. And now we have this whole idea and really uprising of this toxic masculinity that people are saying is true.
And that phrase makes me angry.
Yeah.
It really does. Because I'm
it
like,
does.
don't make me ashamed to raise a man.
Yeah.
In the sense of he should, I get it, he should be well-rounded. He can't just exhibit anger, but don't make me
extreme.
apologize for making
Well,
him.
and I think it's a wrong term because there's toxic men and there's toxicity,
100%,
but toxic masculinity makes it sound like there's this grouping of, if there's a certain way that guys act, then it's not good. And I think our culture's trying to shame us into acting a certain way that we can't express ourselves in certain ways, and anger being one of them. Like, I think there's things that we should be angry about. There's injustices in the world. There's things that are wrong. I had a question for you, Don. I was thinking about in a generation that didn't show emotion and bottled it up, like you probably observed, I would guess, men just kind of hold it together until they didn't. How did you learn how to manage your emotions, or how have you learned?
So I grew up and I was raised by my grandfather who served in World War II, and he was a construction guy. He was very gruff and to the point. And so I saw him hold it together until he couldn't. And so, there's no more real place than a construction site or the back of a cop car.
Very true. Very true.
And people there would hold it together until they couldn't, and then it was all over you. So, we had to learn what was the breaking point and how long should we keep it. So anger's a good thing. It can help you in battle and in war and in moving things, but maybe not around your family and small children. It can be very scary.
Small children like Avery.
No.
Whoa.
Here we go.
Is that a
Shots
short joke?
fired.
You don't got much room to talk there,
So
Andrew.
I have a question on that because we got to know each other really well in Rogo, and you'd be gone all week on a site. So you were living on a site with all the guys doing big projects. How was that transition being away all week with a bunch of construction guys, right? Little rough. How was that transition coming home and now, hey, Helen?
Oh, that's good.
So I used to
difference.
wear a rubber band, actually. And when I got on the job site, if the construction language would creep in, I would snap myself, right?
Wow.
And the bruise got so big I had to switch sides.
No way.
But over time, I was able to adjust more to, hey, this is holiness. This is what God expects of me, right? And it's just a different way of communicating. If you don't communicate harshly with men, sometimes they don't hear you,
No.
Right.
right? And with your family, it's softer.
I need to take a rubber band, put a bunch of rubber bands in my golf bag.
There you go.
Snap.
Yeah, if just kind of a side note, I've heard a lot of guys like complain, like, don't yell at me, don't tell me what to do. But then if you don't, they just go and live their lives and do whatever the heck they want, and they screw them up. And so it's a tough balance to know when to yell and when not to yell.
It's a tightrope to walk. Unfortunately, I think that a lot of people are like, oh, our younger generation is softer, but that's not necessarily true. Like I think people dismiss the potential or the ability to work in young people, and they're getting away with it. If we had men in our lives who not only challenged but encouraged also. And I think that's the key, is affirmation before criticism.
Yeah,
I think
that's good.
For sure our younger generation doesn't take criticism as well. And so if you couple that with affirmation, which I think a lot of guys struggle with, it's hard to affirm and like build up other men.
Yeah, just say something nice about someone.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'm the big macho on the field kind of thing, but if you affirm and then challenge, people are much more likely to respond in a healthy manner. I know for me, on the soccer field or just in life in general, I'm not one to shy away from criticism. I actually enjoy it, but it's hard to take criticism all the time if, I have no affirmation in between. And so, I mean, I even think about this specific example of my soccer field. If I was on the field and I did something wrong and coach is like, hey, you did all this stuff right, but you keep on making this mistake, go and run. Just that phrase, like you're doing things right, gives me motivation to run because I know what I did wrong, but I know what I did right. If he's just like, oh, you're messing that drill up, go run. I'm like, well, what the heck? Like, what else? What specifically am I supposed to work on? What specifically am I doing right? Am I doing anything right? Like, I think our younger generation really needs specific affirmation, detailed affirmation, and because of the fact that we don't get that, I think a lot of people are getting away with laziness or this stigma of less work ethic or things like that.
Yeah.
Christian athletics has a ratio. They say 5 words of praise for every 1 word of criticism.
It's a lot different than the 80s junior tackle coaches I had.
Yeah, much different. Much different.
Yeah. No, I agree though. Like we need safe places to express ourselves. And I think that's one of the challenges is we don't want to receive people's sharing. We fire back with anger because we don't want to hear the honest truth. And I think I appreciate what you're saying about young people. I think it's important to affirm, like that. I think men, because we have the tough exterior, we forget that they still need to be affirmed, that deep down there's some dad issue, there's some insecurity, there's some deeper thing that keeps them kind of needing.
I don't know if we wanted to explore Avery's dad issue now. Or...
He's got some big dad issues.
I do have a story. There's one time.
Here we go.
Here we go.
Please.
So I was at Disneyland. I was about 7 years old, and we were in line for Tower of Terror. And my little brother, Aiden, was only 5. He was able to go ride with adult, but he was like crying and stuff. So he was able to go. And we were in line. We're getting close to like the elevator inside where you go on the ride. And I said, Dad, I don't want to do this. Dad, don't let me do this. And he's like, no, I let Aiden go already. Like, you got to stick it out. So I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to hate this. And so we get on the ride and it pulls you back in the thing and then it starts to lift you up. And immediately I just started crying. And if you look at the picture from after the ride, you see I was wearing a hat at the time. The hat was probably little bit above my head as we were dropping it. I'm just like, ah. And,
awesome.
And it was funny because I've forgiven him. I don't mind that much, but I like to bring it up because that's where my fear of heights started.
You forgave him for taking you to Disneyland?
I forgave him for
really big. That is really big of you.
So hey, speaking of Tower of Terror, we have a tower to conquer. We are going to go up the rock wall. Are you guys down? I know that some of us might be a little afraid, Aurelio.
Yeah, I'd rather not.
To go up on there. There's a rock wall. There's a zip line on the other end of the rock wall.
That's what I'm more worried about.
Can you conquer it? I mean, you're the one who kind of created his fear of heights.
I'm gonna be 42 next week though, so.
But so you're saying you're ready,
brother.
Yeah.
Yes.
Let's do it. Well, thank you guys for the coffee.
Take it with you.
I'm gonna leave this one.
All right.
Love you, Don.
All right. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Sorry,
All
you guys
right,
ruined your good cup of coffee with creamer.
See you, Don.
All right. It's good to see you.
Yeah, no problem. Take care, guys.
Go.
All right, dudes. Rock wall time.
Yeah, can't wait.
All right,
Dude.
come on.
You got a little coffee in you, ready to kind of hype it up?
We should. I was wondering if we could make it like a competition. Maybe like time it.
A speed competition?
Yeah.
Like see how
Let's
fast
do
you
it.
go up there?
I'm a little monkey.
Does that look high to you guys?
Yeah.
So I love
High
this kind
enough.
of stuff.
High
I'm an Enneagram 6, but I love conquering fears.
Bro, these guys think they can beat us.
Oh, what's up?
Oh, look at these guys. What's
So
up?
you guys just hanging out here ready to
Yeah, what's up, man? What's
AKA
up?
Pastor
Griff.
Tom.
Hey,
What's up, dude?
What's up?
All right, so you guys have done this lots of times.
I was definitely afraid of heights.
I'm perceiving you're afraid. Are you? How afraid are you of the rock wall?
If I'm locked in and there's experts saying I'm cool, I'm cool.
Yeah. What about you? Are you afraid?
No, well, I'm not afraid, but I'd rather not do it.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Because
So are
why?
you nervous?
I'm not nervous, but
A
I
nervous
don't want to go up there.
How about the what's
Yeah.
it called? What's the thing that on the other side?
Zip line.
Zip
Zip
line.
line.
Is that more scary to you than going
That
up
I'm
the rock
afraid
wall?
of. That I'm afraid of.
Yeah.
All right.
But yeah, we'll see.
Are you afraid of that or more?
Petrified. Like, I'll climb the wall, but
Yeah.
I don't want to do that.
We'll help you guys.
Amen.
Yeah.
I'll help you guys.
Yeah.
We'll
So you guys
support
just
you guys
jump
from
down.
underneath.
No, I just use
He'll
the
go on the
That
zip
actually
line with
might
you,
be worse.
Aurelio.
Yeah, I'll go on your back.
Really?
You ever see that movie Ghost? He'll just ghost you down the zip line.
With that hair? Yeah, all day.
So you guys are young, so no
Yeah.
fear on either. The rock
I'm
wall?
scared of getting a wedgie going up the rock wall. That's about it. But
That
I'm
is
I'm
true.
scared
Besides that,
about
I'm
beating
good.
him.
Because it like kind of grips you everywhere, right?
You should be
Wait,
scared.
Will,
It
you
is-
say
it
what?
is
You're scared
like-
I'm scared of.
It is
I'm
kinda
scared of
tight.
not beating him.
Oh, not
I gotta compete.
Yeah, okay.
Right.
So what
I
kind
don't
of
do that.
stuff did your like dads or father figures in your life push you to do? If you didn't make you do stuff like this, like what kind of stuff did they like push you to do?
Mow the lawn.
Lots of mowing the lawn.
I had a mow on for sure.
Sports.
that's what
Yeah.
I was gonna
Sports
say.
year
Pushing
round.
sports.
Sports year round. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's on the ground, so that
Yeah,
was like
it's on the
safe.
ground. Nothing will die.
Bro, I remember.
You weren't like high flying dunks.
No.
Right.
I remember pitching and trying to close out games, and my dad yelling at me and me crying on the mound.
Seriously.
Yeah,
Dang,
trying to
dang.
close
Classic.
out the game.
Not surprised.
That's
Right.
That's the kind of stuff I'm scared of, man.
yeah. That's heavy.
Yeah.
Was part of it the embarrassment of like being out there and dad's yelling? Or?
Yeah, well, that and everybody's looking at me.
Yeah,
and
right.
Super individualistic. I'm like, I thought this was a team sport.
Right.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
all on
And
you.
it's all on me. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Wow.
Do you ever have like dreams about that, or do you think about it much?
I think about it. It's funny. I think about that every time I get up to speak in front of people. That's what I
Oh,
think
wow.
about.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Dang.
Because everybody's looking at me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So did you guys have dads that like pushed you really hard? Did
I actually-
Virgil push hard?
Virgil
that name,
Eugene.
man. I love
Virgil.
Have you guys met
Eugene.
Adam's dad, dude?
No.
His
No.
beard
so.
will envelop you. It is
Go. That's where you get it
impressive.
from. That's good.
Yeah. My dad was actually, he wasn't a big sports guy.
Yeah.
I grew up in NorCal,
sorry.
and it's
Yeah,
okay.
it's
We'll,
tough, man.
we'll talk. Maybe somebody could get between us before we start throwing some punch. No. So I grew up with the 80s Niners, Joe Montana, Jerry Rice, and
Yeah.
my family doesn't know where like I picked that up from because my family wasn't a sports family. My dad wasn't like, I'm a fan of this team or that.
Yeah.
And so, but he was also pretty. He was fairly physically present growing up, but he was also fairly passive. Like he didn't push me into anything, which
That's good.
like is good and bad, right?
Sure,
I mean,
right.
There's a
Gotcha,
part where
gotcha.
I probably needed to be pushed.
Amen.
But he wanted me to love what he loved, and I didn't. And so that, like, he was a mechanical type guy. He loved guns. He has a machine shop, like, and I have like that skipped a generation or something. Like, I have zero of that skill set. And so like just mechanicking the car because we were like blue collar, month to month kind of deal.
yeah.
And so if something broke, he had to fix it.
Yeah.
And I wasn't into it.
Right.
And so that created a little bit of a distance. And there's even a part of it that I had to own. Like, man, I wish I would have engaged more, even if it wasn't my thing, just for the relational connection and the time that we could have spent. And
Because you're a pretty out there, bold guy. Like, what pushed you to kind of break through that? Did you have like mentors in your life or people in your life?
I think it's just how I'm wired.
Yeah.
Like I was the kid. I think I'm a fairly friendly guy. Like I love people. I'm actually mildly introverted, but I love people. I'm friendly. I like being kind to people. So it was funny because I went to college in Oklahoma, and people know that, so they think I'm from Oklahoma. But I have some of that like country boy, like
you-
Southern
you
hospitality.
You got country
like
boy.
I
You got
love,
that
I
look.
love like waving.
Dad named Virgil.
I got his middle name, which is Eugene, and I love it.
Eugene, I love it.
But I like here we are in Southern California, and I love just like waving to people. Right?
Yeah,
They drive
right,
by,
totally.
and in SoCal they're like, "What?
Right.
Why are you waving?" I'm like,
Yeah,
"Oh,
totally.
hi. I'm just saying hi." Literally, that's all it is. So, but yeah, bold in that sense. Like I was always just kind of out there.
Yeah.
But I actually, I kind of after high school, when I went kind of off the deep end for a while, I went the other direction when I was in college because I really needed to like a lot of that was a persona or like a reputation. Like, oh, Atch is here. My nickname Atch, short for my last name, Atchison. And there was an expectation and a pressure to be like the center of the party, or man, if he's here, there's gonna be a story we're telling 6 years from now when we get back together because of this guy has showed up or whatever, you know. And so some of that was false, I think, that built onto what was already natural, and I had to kind of undo that to rediscover my true self or whatever. So that's good.
Yeah. That's heavy.
Will, what about you, my man?
Yeah. I mean, I didn't really have like a specific like. My father was present, but like he wasn't like guiding me through stuff. Like I kind of did things on my own. It wasn't until I got to college I met a guy on my freshman year in my hall, and he was the first person that actually like called me out. I'm like, dude, you call yourself a Christian, but you're living a different life. Like I don't understand. Like talk to me. And so he was the first person to really care more about like my relationship with Jesus and my salvation more than my friendship with him. So he taught me how to be authentic. And he was actually the guy that actually brought me to Sandals. And hey, this is how you be real with yourselves, and even specifically like the aspect of like it's okay not to be okay.
Yeah.
Like because growing up, I was always kind of like you, Adam, like really kind, really like exuberant. Really, I had to smile all the time. I had the joy, but deep inside, there was times where I'm like, how do I process the other feelings? Like no one has ever really taught me how to do that. So this guy really taught me on my freshman year hall, and then he mentored me throughout college and even until a little bit today too. So yeah, he's a good dude.
That's awesome, man.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
So yeah, just like pushing you to do kind of hard things. Like
Yeah.
The things that don't come natural.
Yeah. More like emotionally processing
Right.
things and not sweeping it under the rug and putting in the hard work on.
Yeah.
Okay, like you did this. Why did you do that? What's the motive behind that? What's the why behind why you
Right.
did that? Instead of being like, it's whatever. Like I'll just keep going.
Well, yeah, and I don't know if it's a generational thing, but it feels like most dads pushed us in like maybe sports, like we
Right.
talked about, you know, like really kind of living vicariously through us,
Right.
or like my dad, you know, just with fixing things and stuff. You know, he was super handy, and I'm not at all. But you know, like it skipped a generation for me. But pushing toward emotional things, like that didn't happen until I had mentors in my life.
Right.
You know, like people at Sandals that asked me questions that made me think a little bit, and I'd get red faced and a little uncomfortable, and you know, not want to you know, deal with that hard
And
stuff.
people call that like when I was growing up, they're like, you're so soft. Like why would that's so you're not, man. Like there's different
like
stigmas.
showing emotions, you mean?
Yes, like
Yourself?
different stigmas of what a man should be and
Totally.
what a man is. So I just got that like confused growing up.
I think that's a major barrier for young guys to get connected at the church.
Yeah.
Because they think that, oh, if I do this, I'm going to be perceived a certain way. I'm going to look soft, and I didn't learn it growing up. So at least for me, like I had to grow up and be my own man. Like I had to be independent. That led to me getting into all kinds of trouble, getting incarcerated, and really that was all just fruits of me having to try to figure out how to navigate life and not be vulnerable with people and not be open and honest and be okay saying I'm not okay. And I think that's like, honestly, that's probably the biggest challenge for like Gen Z coming in is they've had to either figure it out themselves because they don't have a dad in their life or their dad doesn't talk to them about that stuff. So,
Right.
I was when I worked at a university, and one of the pastors there, who I had mentored me, I asked him, say, hey, what's the number one issue you see with students? And he immediately, without even batting an eye, he said, lack of a father. He said lack of a father either physically or being physically there, but like emotionally, like not present. And so I just totally, what's interesting, so my dad, he was there, he worked hard, he worked so hard. And it's probably like what when he's like, well, what did your dad teach you? I would say my dad taught me based upon what I saw. I wouldn't say he specifically taught me anything.
You just watched him.
I just watched him operate. And so, you know, and then you also have to understand, like, I mean, when you think of like your father, you have to think of his father and think of his father.
Yeah.
And so like not being there emotionally, are you kidding me? Like when I hear him talk about his dad, like definitely not there emotionally, like, hey, you get it done, you know? If he pushed him like, hey, you work hard. And so I just kind of always saw my dad just constantly working hard and just kind of even barely being there, like emotionally. Like, I mean, never saw my dad cry. And the one time I did, I was like, oh, I cried. You know, like the whole family cried. Oh, totally. Because he was an intimidating man. He was a very strong man physically and everything else. And you just like, you couldn't penetrate him. You could not penetrate him. And so as the years go by now, like, what's interesting, as he became a grandfather and as he dived more into ministry, I think more so being a grandparent, he's become a whole lot softer. And I see him cry even more now than I ever have before. But just kind of growing up like that just made such an impression on me. You know, I learned by what I saw. And so,
That's really good.
Yeah, I had to learn as well. It is an Enneagram 8. Vulnerability is weakness, and that's a lie. Of course, it's not truth. But the story of Pastor Andrew's one of my best friends, and we're coaching AYSO soccer team together. We're at this practice, and this kid who's just an interesting looking kid who's just kicking rocks as he walks with his backpack, wanders into our practice. And we're on the backside of the goal, and the kids are kind of, they're scrimmaging, it's at the end. And he just kind of stumbles into our presence, into our conversation. And he looks up at us and sort of like robotically was like, I want to kick that ball.
What?
And we were like,
Kick away.
Go for it.
So
So that's become a kind of a funny thing, especially even in our community group. Whenever I'm expressing myself emotionally, I'll say like, I want to kick the ball, because it's like very like,
interesting.
I am very sad right now.
I'm going to share something deep.
I am very angry. And so like, I want, and then they'll be, hey, good job kicking the ball, buddy. Like you did it. You expressed some emotion, But it's definitely a practice. I think it's taken years to learn that piece of, and even as it relates to stereotypical like masculinity,
totally,
that I think needs to be overcome, because they're not mutually exclusive. Like I know some like manly men in that sense, in that classical stereotypical sense, big beards, or they can fix
So you're
anything.
saying that you're more manly because you're
Pretty much, yep. But I don't know what a Phillips screwdriver looks like. But,
Thank you.
Or where to find one.
We're in the same boat.
I was raised by, my dad was really kind. Like and he still is. But when things got emotional and got a little too deep, he'd quickly go left. And I see that with him now. Like when I try to have conversations with him, it's like, yeah, it'll be okay. Like it'll work out. And then it's almost like he compartmentalizes.
Yes.
And I can remember the 2 times I've seen my dad cry. Once was when my parents got divorced. I was like 7 or 8. I saw him cry. And he's such a great guy. He's taught me so much about just caring, treating people well. Like that's a lot of that comes from him. But my grandfather, I actually spent more time with him. It was his dad, World War II vet, right? Depression era kid. Both parents passed before he was, I think, 10.
Wow.
So just a whole
man.
But a strong man. And when I would spend every day with him after school, my sister used to tease me. She's like, "You're gonna be more like Grandpa than Dad." And it came true. Like it's just my grandpa and I are so much more alike. But as he passed. He lived till he was 94. He passed away 2 years ago.
Wow.
Amazing.
He was so soft at the end, in a kind, loving way, and it really impacted me, because I'm like, that's not Grandpa Andrew. Like he just wanted to talk about things, and then I would watch him. I named my son after him before I met him.
Not too soon.
But I would watch him like with my son, like with my Andrew, not Becca's Andrew, my Andrew. And I would watch my grandpa with him, and it was a whole different side of him.
I'm telling you, man.
Than I had ever seen.
Totally.
But then when I see my dad with my kids, it's just this entirely different side of him that when I try to engage, we don't have.
Isn't that amazing?
And so I would say the first time really being able to work through emotions, because I came out of a world where you didn't express emotion. You didn't tell people things were wrong with you, and you just tucked it away. I'm a stuffer. I just stuff it, and we'll forget it's there. And it wasn't until our first men's group that you invited me into, that it was, hey, this is like, it's okay to acknowledge that this is bothering me.
Yeah.
And so I feel like there's still like a whole suitcase full of that stuff to figure out from the years of just stuffing and going.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to me because to have like such a great, kind, genuine dad, but yet there's still depths he won't go to as you try to.
And I want to affirm you specifically because the world that you came out of was law enforcement world, and I mean that's a really hard job. I mean, especially in our current climate. But just this last week, you know, you're at the funeral of a fellow police officer who passed away from just medical conditions, not related to the job. But in our campus pastor thread, you know, you said, hey, it's a really hard day for me. I need your prayers. There was a vulnerability to say, this is a trigger for me. And so I want to affirm that I see you practicing that. And it's really powerful.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was thinking about, I wonder like how we're doing at transferring, because all of us except for Will, because Will's about to get married, have sons, and like I wonder how we're doing. Like, what are they going to reflect back 20 years from now?
Oh my gosh.
Like, did they get emotions from us? Did they understand how to press into that?
Yeah.
And I think like I'm trying to do that, and I wonder how much our dads tried, or maybe they didn't know how to try, and we're like kind of breaking something new.
I think that's a big part of it, because I think they didn't know how.
Yeah.
They didn't.
Like when you're not equipped to do it, it's not just something you naturally
I'm telling
do.
you.
I have to go out of my way with my son to go like, how are you? Like, are things okay? Is there anything you want to tell me?
Yeah.
Like, I want to make it okay for him to be able to talk to me about anything. Because if he starts keeping little things from me now, then he's not going to be.
What's crazy is it goes against my grain. To be like, hey, Justice, and like come around him and like love him and to have like the deep like emotional kind of conversations, because literally never happened. Literally never happened. And my wife's like, will you just hug him? I'm like, oh, all right.
Yes.
Come here. Come here, child.
I want to kick the ball.
Right, yeah.
Here, so let's get them all together.
But when I know I do, it's like there's something in me. It's a lot of me. It feels like this is right.
Yep.
Yeah.
This is what's supposed to happen.
Yeah.
So I think that on the one hand, I do affirm that understanding that men are emotional beings too, which sounds funny, is an obvious truth, but
it's
especially
not, I don't think it's so obvious though. Like,
maybe
I think that's,
Oh, but I think the uniqueness. I always say the most unique piece of our vision at Sandals Church is the real with self piece. I mean, that doesn't mean the real with God or real with others is unimportant. It's just it's the least highlighted historically within the church. And so, although I think there's a newness that we're bringing, a corrective thing with just learning how to kick the ball and express emotion. I also think it would be naive to think that we're not also passing something on that's broken, and that there's something that we're missing too. We don't know what that is.
Adam, why do you have to say that?
we're feeling all good about ourselves.
He didn't get it from me.
Here's the key, because I think my primary job as a father is, and I've told my boys this explicitly. I have 4 boys. I've said, I'm doing my darndest, even to correct some of this generationally, to be present to you. But I can't always be there. There's going to come a time and a place where you need me, and I won't be there. And that's why you need a Heavenly Father.
Come on, brother.
And so,
come on.
like, teaching them that whatever we're correcting generationally, or just I think that's a value add that is new. At the same time, we're still.
Because we could be totally in touch with our emotions and raise our boys to be, but that doesn't mean they love Jesus or know how to run to Him or
absolutely
find Him.
Totally.
And so it's a good tool to help them hopefully go, I know more of myself, and the more I know of myself, the more I can bring it to God and like pour it out to Him. That's my hope.
But even one thing that came to mind as you were sharing, it was the fear for me of not knowing how to be there for him in an instance or something that he comes to me with, and I go, I don't know. I don't know how to navigate this. Because let's go back to roughhousing, because that'll make you laugh and have fun.
It is easier.
It's easier, but I don't. There are things that will eventually be brought to us, and I'm like,
but
what do I do?
And in those moments, I think it's about this, because if you're like, Andrew, I'm sending you to Pastor Adam, right? Like, he's going to talk to you about some things, right? Or because this happens with us all the time, and our boys. And I'm like, have at it. Like, you have free reign. I trust you with my boys. And whereas like I think naturally most of the time we're like, don't tell me how to parent. Like, don't parent my kid, right? And it's not the way at all here with us, I think. So.
I think when he was affirming you, the thing I was thinking about is that the way I experience you is that you're not a finished product. And I think that that's something that young people need to learn so much.
Amen.
And so the fact that we have men who are willing to say that, because that's what I fight against. I wanna come off like, oh, I'm like the young campus pastor. I'm ready. You know, that's the lie that I want to buy into. But to get to see you just really own the fact that like, hey, I'm still growing and I'm still learning. I think that's going to do wonders for your kids. And not only that, the byproduct is you're talking about it, you're open about it. So young guys in our church get to see that and they go, oh, that's the kind of guy I want to be.
We're blessed to have a church that's young.
Yes.
Where there's young men like you who love the Lord and are on this journey with us. What are some of like the biggest challenges that you see to like in particular like young men in our church right now, or just to whether it's to authenticity or toward you've committed like you're you know I see a fear of commitment a lot, like guys tend to not get married until they're in their 30s or at all.
Yeah, that's a good one. I think commitment is a big one. They're afraid to being committed to something as well too. And then I think the biggest thing that I've seen in specifically the young adult community is I think kind of like what you guys were saying, some of those stuff were passed on. They don't know how to do it. And I honestly think it's like it's a little bit of stubbornness, and it's a little bit of posture of like they don't have a posture of humility. They don't have a posture of being a sponge and being able to soak in things. So I think the teachability aspect we've lost because our society and what the culture and social media has been telling us is you do it yourself.
That's right.
You don't need
find
help.
your own way.
You find
You
your
can
own way,
access
right?
the
You're
information.
your own person. Figure it out.
Yeah.
You're independent.
Everybody's an expert in everything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and even I love this aspect right here because it allows you to say things like, I don't know, like I don't know how to do this. Like I need help. So I think there's a lot of like, I mean, even this generation, like we tend to do things ourselves, and I think, man, we have to branch out. We have to be in the church. We have to be in community. There's times where, man, I'll be honest, there's times where I don't want to go, but man, I'll force myself to, and I have to check myself and be like, this is what I need. Almost every time that I don't feel like
group, like
groups or going to church and stuff like that, like
Being engaged.
yeah, it's usually like those times where like I don't want to go, when at the end of it, when I come out, I'm like, dang, I'm really glad I did.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's
You know,
every
so-
time. That's right.
I think the posture of humility, the posture of like being teachable, and just the posture of being saying like, I don't know what to do, man. So I think that's like a big thing with young adults.
Yeah, just talking about commitment. I mean, you recently made a really big shift, a really big move to come on to staff at Sandals Church.
Yeah, dude.
But there was a journey there,
Yeah.
and you had to overcome just some internal battles. Would you mind sharing, just at whatever level you're comfortable, like some of what you had to overcome to say yes to what the Lord was calling you to?
That's a great question. Yeah, so I think the biggest thing that I had to die to ultimately at the end of the day was my preferences or God's. Like, it's, are you gonna do what I want you to do, or are you gonna keep going what you're comfortable with? A big thing for me, I mean, growing up in my culture, in the Chinese culture specifically, I think there's a lot of like success academically. How you guys were talking about fathers, like, I think I was very much pressured to be like, all right, what's your next step? Grad school. All right, medical school. What's the next step for you? So I think there was pressure there as well. So that was kind of the thing I felt. I was like, man, I can't. I don't. Ministry does not seem like the conventional way to go down for me. But it really had to become like it just took time, and it took prayer. It took people praying over me. It took people speaking into me, and it ultimately took even my like perspective of ministry. That had to die too.
Wow.
That had to die, and so
Or maybe even your perspective of success. Sounds like that needed to be redefined.
absolutely.
What success is.
So yeah, success for me and comfort for me, right, has always been, all right, financially. If you have enough money, you'll be set.
Right.
So that had to be worked with as well too, and like no, my security's in the Lord, and ultimately,
Amen, brother.
and even to speak on that, I had people like you that poured into me, that believed in me, that empowered me, that saw something and pulled it out. And man, I think young men need more of that.
Yes,
They need to be like,
yes.
I see you serving, man. Like, I see the character that you're developing. Like, I think you'd be really a big asset to the kingdom of God. Like, have you thought of that? And just like questioning and just like kind of empowering, because I think if people didn't at Sandals didn't do that for me, like I don't think I would be here.
Yeah.
Honestly. So
And dude, that's huge because I think
is.
you know we're shown as men to like push forward, be a man, or we're encouraged to be like
Right.
that. You know, to do hard things or whatever, which I think is important. We
Yeah.
need to do hard things like this
Yeah.
rock wall and stuff like that, right? Because it does something for us.
Yeah.
Like, no, doing hard things and suffering aren't always a bad thing, right?
Yes.
But like things like overcoming my internal insecurities doesn't happen by doing a rock wall.
Right.
It happened when guys like Adam and Pastor Dan Crowley
Right.
would listen to me talk about my real deep down fears.
Right.
The stuff that I wouldn't want to tell anybody because it felt
Yeah.
embarrassing.
Yeah.
But they didn't treat me as though what I said was embarrassing. They
Right.
like loved
Yeah,
me, they
that's
encouraged
good.
me, they asked me
That's good, my man.
questions. And my insecurity was like lost kind of in that
Right.
season
Yeah.
of,
Right.
and I had to do hard things. I had to stand up on a stage when we launched the Woodcrest campus and
Yeah.
preach every single week,
Yeah.
and I sucked for like 50 weeks. But that like God used that time as I confessed and shared how weak I was to like kind of pull that insecurity out of me.
Yeah.
It's always through the process.
Yeah.
It's never like the beginning or then. It's always through the process where you're worked on.
That's right, the
the
process.
most.
I love what you said, though. I think for each other, and this didn't actually happen from a man. It was a friend who was a volunteer
Yeah.
when I was first at Sandals Church. But this idea of seeing something in someone that they don't see
Yes.
in themselves and calling it out ahead of time. Like speaking it, like saying,
Yeah.
like this, because most of us don't see that in ourselves. Like some of the most successful people on the outside are the most
Right.
insecure. We know
Right.
that, right?
Yeah.
And some of that's compensation for the insecurity.
Right.
And so to be able to speak something that almost you have to help them believe it about themselves.
Totally.
Right.
And it's powerful when somebody can start to be affirmed in that way before it's even actual for them sometimes.
Right. And I think that two things that go with that just came to mind. I think first it comes back with having a posture of humility. Because I think as guys, if I see like you're better at me in like golf or basketball, like I'm be like, all right, I'm not gonna ask him. Definitely basketball. All right, we gonna see. If if you have a guy that comes up to you and like I can be like, if you see a guy that's naturally better than you, like you can have a tendency to be like the temptation to be like, oh yeah, I'm not gonna ask him like, how can I get better at this? Like you don't ask that, you compete, right? You know? So I think that's one thing, and then I think two, something that even some of my roommates and I have practiced often is confession. I think that's like really huge. Like,
That's good.
dude, like I messed up last night. Like I messed up. I was thinking these ways towards you. I'm sorry. I think that opens up. I think that's almost the root of humility, even. So
Kind of like that vulnerability.
yeah.
I feel like that's kind of what, talk about the generations, I wish kind of younger individuals would be more vulnerable, or you said humility, like receiving.
Yes.
Yeah.
I feel like a teachability. I worked at 3 different universities. I've been a student ministry pastor, and the biggest thing I think that's difficult about this which is fine, the next generation, is that like it's hard for them to receive. It's hard for them to be teachable.
Yeah.
And at the same time, we don't have older men or older individuals.
Older men?
I think, wait, who's the oldest?
I'm the oldest, but I do not look the oldest.
Oh, I got the grace.
There you go.
That's ministry right there. Ministry.
But if older individuals were in the right place,
Yeah.
first of all, with their vulnerability, with their humility, and at the same time, like, hey, help pull someone else up. Like, what are you doing for the next generation? So on one side, like, hey, like you need to receive, and the other side, like, hey, you need to pour into. I find very far few in between individuals, men specifically, that want to pour into anybody.
Right.
And one, I think it's, I think the biggest reason is because maybe they're not being poured into, possibly.
Yeah.
And then the other reason, it's to pour into someone means you need to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
Like you need to be authentic. You
Right.
need to be real.
You need to set it.
Right.
You need to
They got to
set
see
example.
what it looks like.
Totally. And I feel like that's just that's missing in such a big way.
I also think there's the lie that that even young people don't have something to offer of value, and that's a lie because
That is a
when
lie.
it comes to mentoring or
Totally.
like pulling somebody up, I always say like you only really need to be about a step or two ahead.
That's right.
It's not like
No,
you
you're
have
right,
to
you're right.
arrive at some like
Right.
mythical like place of like, oh, I'm ready to now mentor.
Right.
Like take somebody who's 2 steps behind you.
Adam, and you know what it's that's discipleship.
Yeah.
And you know the thing I've discovered when I've been discipling people, I'm like, shut the front door. I'm learning. I feel like I'm learning more than that individual.
Totally.
Even though I'm like,
real.
there was a guy named Toshi I was able to lead to Christ like a year and a half ago.
and he was just like nowhere near connected, understood Christianity, faith, the Bible. And he asked me such crazy, awesome, amazing questions. And every time I left, I'm like, God, you showed up today. Like, I felt like I got a lot out of it.
Man.
And so, so.
That's like a perfect argument for being involved in kids ministry, man. I just thought about, I used to teach
Seriously.
kindergarten first graders, and I'd get up in front of them, and I'd be like, yeah, because, you know, why would Jesus do that? And they'd go, because Jesus loves us. And I'd be like, he does. He loves us, man.
I forgot about that.
That's true.
That's so true, man.
They say you haven't mastered something until you can teach it well.
Right.
Yeah. Amen. Yeah,
Even for
amen.
yourself. You know?
Totally.
So.
So, yeah, Griff, so you like grew up spiritually at Sandals because you were like 18-ish.
Yeah.
When you started
18.
coming. Like, you probably have the best perspective from like a younger age. Like, what have you experienced, like mentor-wise, and what's it done for you?
Yeah, it's weird because I used to be the young guy in the room, and now I'm not. Now I work with this guy.
Still the youngest campus pastor ever, I think.
Yeah.
Ever.
So,
Wow.
unless you
Sandals.
count.
I mean, not
That's legit.
There's that guy.
You don't count. So, yeah. So it's kind of interesting just because I remember my perspective and me feeling insecure and feeling like I'm not worthy of being invested in. And part of that's just from my childhood. But also I think it's just a natural thing for younger guys to feel like, well, why would they want to go spend time with me? And now that I get older, I feel that same lie creeping in of like, well, why would this guy want to spend time with me? He's like, look how cool he is, man.
Will is
In both directions.
Will, you're.
I mean, he's a Lakers fan, so it's pretty cool.
I know,
Look at
it
that
is
hair,
rough.
Dude, look at the hair.
I know, dude.
The
Yeah.
hair's on.
I'm trying to get here like that.
Yeah.
And
I'm almost there.
And what's crazy is that like that's robbing ourselves of the daily blessing of the gospel.
Amen.
Right?
Yeah.
Is being able to
Oh
invest
man,
in
that's
people.
so true.
For me to talk to him about what it is to be a husband, because I didn't get to see that growing up. And I've had to go through it. I've had to, really I've gotten to learn from Andrew. Andrew was like one of the first people I even talked to and had a real conversation with at Sandals. Yeah. And so I think about that and I go, man, I get to I went through all that hard stuff to pick up those things.
Yeah.
Now I get to see that God is using me to invest in guys like him. And eventually, if he chooses to be a dad, if God chooses him to be a dad, that I get to even see that work out in redemption, where it's like, man, that was one of the hardest things for me to overcome is I didn't have that growing up. I didn't have a dad who invested in me and who cared enough about me to be present and to say no to the other things that he said yes to. And so when I'm trying to, I'm trying my hardest, man, I want to be a good dad even more than I want to be a good pastor. Right. And so when I'm trying to do that, that dies with me unless I pass it on to other guys. And so it's like a practical way for the gospel to work out in redemption and see God overcome our weakness and make it strength.
That's huge, man.
Just don't pass
Dude,
on golf.
that's a mic drop
pass
moment.
on golf.
Dude, hey guys, I think it's time to conquer some fears today. You ready, really?
Yeah.
I kind of like having a conversation.
Like I like
We can talk all day.
Let's
but
just
hey,
keep talking.
We can be vulnerable at the base of the wall. That
right.
feels stronger.
Yeah.
That feels stronger.
Yeah,
Let's walk around.
I hear you trying to avoid the difficult things, but we're gonna do this.
I'm not even gonna lie. I am.
I say we go for it.
All right.
Let's spend this
All
one.
right, you first, man.
Let's
Yeah,
go,
dude.
dude.
I will be first.
Hey, Will,
place.
there's a competition.
How you feeling, man?
Good.
How's it look up
I'm
there?
gonna do the easy one.
Does that look scary, man?
No. It's that zip line, dude.
Does that feel good?
Yes.
Ready?
My name's Aurelio and I accept this challenge.
Yeah, he does. Come on, boy.
Let's go.
Get on up there.
Hey, timer started, bro.
Don't be afeared. There we go.
Do you need help?
Don't step on the spinning one.
Do you need help?
And we're done.
Nice.
All right, Andrew, I think you're next.
How do you think Erica would feel about you conquering this fear?
Yeah, I
You
don't.
think she'd be proud?
Yeah, I don't care. She is so much braver than me when it comes to doing all the wild stuff. So, yeah. All right, looks like we're gonna have to just hurry up and do this.
All right, dude. Hey, I'm proud of you, man. Here's what's gonna happen. You're gonna be totally fine. You're gonna have a slight amount of fun in the midst of your fear, and then you're gonna be able to tell Erica that you conquered this. I think it's gonna be awesome.
Oh, I don't think so, but I really don't want to do
I
this.
wasn't doing this line yet. You have to get closer.
Oh, how about you go first, Andrew?
I believe in you, man. Once you step off, think about it like
Bro,
faith.
I know, but man, this is something that, bro, I don't think I can do this.
I'm gonna pray for you. God, I know this is different than a spiritual journey, but I still know that you're with Aurelio in this. Pray that you'd help him to conquer his fear, give him the courage to step forward, and God, to trust this system and to trust you. In Jesus' name, amen. You can do it, bro. Ready? I'll count you down. 3.
Hold on.
2.
Hold on.
Take a deep breath. I'll join you down there, okay? Go for it. Yeah!
Oh, God. Oh! I felt like I was gonna puke.
Oh, man, that was sick. Yeah! God, man! Hey, right here, dude. Come on.
Oh, man.
A little bit afraid, a lot afraid.
God has not given me a spirit of fear,
Which means you're afraid.
but this scares me. But this scares me.
He almost like flipped upside down. Just making it look easy. Am I on the little kids one? That's the easiest one. It's not a little kid, it's just the easy one. Time! What's my time, Jeff?
Yeah, I got 2 older brothers. So so the household, it was all men, 2 older brothers, constant competition.
Yeah.
Now I live with all girls. Nobody cares.
You ready, dude? I'm hungry. After some rock walling, zip lining, Aurelio, I'm so proud of you.
Yeah, I don't even know how much of an appetite I have after
Your stomach's still a
my
knot.
stomach's still a nut.
Brother Jeff,
Yes.
would you like to pray for us?
Yeah,
as
my
we
man,
sit
of
down?
course.
All right.
Father God, we just thank you so much, Lord. We give you praise for everything, dear God, the good, the bad, and the ugly, Lord. Father, I thank you so much for this time. I thank you so much for these brothers in Christ, dear God, that, man, that I love so much, Father. Thank you so much for our conversation that we've already had, dear God. I pray, dear God, that as we continue to have conversation, dear God, about life, Father, may you be in it, Father. May your will be done, Father. May you be glorified. Thank you so much for this food. And yeah, we are just excited for what you are going to do for the rest of this day. In Jesus' name, amen.
That's an intimidating prayer, man.
It's the low
You made
voice.
that prayer good.
Oh,
This
man.
looks so good.
The crazy thing is my dad has his voice is like deeper, much deeper than mine. And so, you know, I grew up with a father, 6'4", 290, and a voice like James Earl Jones and Barry White put together. And on top of everything, the Lord had made him black.
Was that intimidating to Nikki when she met him and stuff like that?
No.
No?
Well, you know what? I'm sorry. Yes, it was, but she wasn't intimidated because of his size and his strength. I mean, he is an intimidating man. But for her, it was more so she just wanted to impress, or she also was like, oh gosh, what are they going to think of me? And also being like a white girl coming to a black person's house, and meeting the whole family. But honestly, she was just so immediately accepted because, as you guys know, my wife, she's just awesome.
Oh, yeah.
And so she fit right in. She was loud with us, laughing and carrying on.
So
But,
would you
yeah.
share the story with these guys? I don't know if you've heard it before. Earlier this year when the George Floyd stuff happened and
Yeah.
a lot of the racial tension in our country
yeah.
began,
Yeah.
I remember having a conversation with you and I
Yeah.
just said, hey, can you tell me, have you ever experienced any of this? Can you tell me a story and you told me a story in your own home when your dad came in to set some things straight in that deep voice of his.
Yeah.
Can you capture what you learned from your dad in that?
Oh gosh, wow, yeah. All of us are there. And my dad was not, for whatever reason, not at home. And we were hanging out. My wife said something about mixed kids being like the prettiest or the most beautiful or whatever, just because, you know, the scene was whatever. And my siblings, the majority of them, and in-laws, like, they just like, wait, what do you mean? Like, so you mean like black kids ain't pretty as mixed kids? I mean, it was, and niggas like, oh no, I didn't know, you know, like, that's racism. Like, well, I didn't know, that's ignorant racism, you know, and it just, guys, I'm telling you, it was a scene. It was a scene, so much so where Nikki like left, you know, not left the house, but she left, like went downstairs or whatever.
She wasn't okay.
And I'm like just, you know, firing off of my siblings, you know, because they were not happy at that comment. And I'm like obviously supporting my wife and trying to tell them what was happening, all that. And so it was this, and my wife ended up coming upstairs, just like, hi guys, I'm so sorry, I didn't know, whatever. And you would think that would like settle it down, but it just didn't. It didn't settle it down, and it was still kind of like elevated. And then all I remember, as we were like, I mean, levels are pretty, you know, high. All I remember is the door shutting as we're still arguing, and then, you know, my dad comes in the kitchen, hears everything going on, and he's like, what's going on? And like, oh no, and we all try to like, well, no, it's all right, Dad. Like, no, you in my house arguing like this, what's going on? You know, I mean, he was just, and we told him, you know, we quickly told him what was going on. He's like, what? You've got to be kidding me. First of all, every single one of you have said that. What, because a white person says it, it's wrong? I mean, he just said like, he said all of us racist. Every single one of us racist. We all say stuff that's stupid. You know, what this is done, is finished now. I just remember later on talking to my dad, like, and just even crying like, Dad, thank you so much for like stepping in and just kind of, and the thing is, if there's anyone, listen to me now, if there's anyone that could be upset, who could have taken that as like just pure racism and just come out, it's my dad. Yeah. My dad grew up when, I mean, he remembered him and his dad walking on the sidewalk, and then a white lady kind of was like, kind of coming towards them, and he's like, son, get on the street. He's like, what? Get on the street. And then he had to get on the street because a younger female, and then he also remembers a younger male, and he's like, yes, sir. And my dad was like, what? Why would you call him sir when he is younger than you? And just like, I mean, he's like, they're in our path. And that just stuck. And I could tell you many, many, many other moments like that happened for my dad. And so for my dad, the fact that all the stuff that has happened, of course it's horrible, it's difficult, it's tragic, but he doesn't allow that to define him. He doesn't allow that to define him. And I think I just kind of learned that. Well, now some of my siblings is not there yet, and that makes sense. I'm not, you know, whatever. But my dad and my mom and dad just did a great job of accepting my wife for exactly who she is, as a follower of Jesus Christ, then my wife, and then everything else is after that.
Well, I love the role of dad, like even the fact that God gives men deeper voices. Yeah. Like there's something about that commands power, and how we're supposed to use it for good. Like we're supposed to use it for those moments rather than, like we were talking about anger earlier, rather than using it in anger, we use it for good, for like those teaching moments and having authority. I think that's huge.
I heard a pastor say, he's talking about parenting, and he says, moms, your voice, you know, it's 100 pounds. You have 100 pounds of influence. Dads, for whatever reason, your voice is 500 pounds of influence. And depending on how you use it, you know what I'm saying? You can use it for good, or you can use it for not so good. Yep. And when I heard that pastor say it, I'm like, oh my gosh, how many 500 pounds of negativeness have I given my kids?
Totally.
And so,
it's so easy to do. I found myself like, you get angry, and then I don't know if I expect my boys to respond right away and like all of a sudden have this amazing response, which I don't do. Right. And then I get angrier and it gets louder, and it's so easy to just kind of become an intimidating person rather than like calmly, even the calm, deep voice. There's something about that that's powerful and soothing and really important.
It's huge. So my wife's family is all from Mexico. So when I think about the differences of me stepping into like her household when we were dating, and just how warm and welcoming her family was, even though my Spanish is terrible. But there's a cultural divide because I'm born and raised here. My wife's first generation. Okay. But her dad is one of the most loving people I've ever met. Wow. Like I get to see that mirroring in my father and hers. And he'd do anything in the world for his daughter. Like Erica, she's his, everything. And that tone was set very early when I came in the house, because in the Mexican household, you go meet Mama first. Hey, Linda. And then Romero was just so incredible to me. And so when people come to our house with our kids or parents, whoever, like I try to be the one who gets to set that tone.
Yeah.
Like, hey, you're welcome here. We're happy to have you.
That's good.
And when Dad does it though, like you talk about that voice and your role, it just makes that transition so much easier. Because it's usually the dude, right? The stereotypical Homer Simpson sitting in his chair, eating his chips, and whoever comes in, who cares? But when the dad goes out of his way to go, I'm happy you're here.
That's huge. What's amazing is as the Enneagram 7, I'm the funny guy, I'm the energetic guy. I am more strict and stern than Nikki, the Dutch girl. I am so strict and stern to the point. And I think what it is just, that's what my father was. And what's interesting, what I've discovered is that I think with the newer generation, or just, most parents we know are so lenient with their kids. Oh, they'll figure it out. Oh, whatever. And I think
something be said for helping them figure it out.
Exactly. There you go. There you go. But it's this weird, my wife was raised in a certain way where there was so much grace. There was so much time taken out to explain. Her dad was, oh my word, he was like so calm, cool, and collected. Where she's like, there was one time he got upset, and he came in the room and he took like the spanking spoon. Seriously, one time. came in the bedroom and he just kind of took the spoon. He's like, you guys, and he hit the dresser with the spanking spoon and it like broke and he kind of went away and he came back like, I'm very sorry. And I'm like, what?
And that's it?
like, what is that? And so to have the difference of sides, and so she's trying to raise our kids this way. I'm trying to raise our kids this way. We're trying to meet in the middle, and there's still, after 12 years, there's frustration on both. So we're still trying to figure that out. And I know at the end of the day, it's 80% me. Like 80% me, I probably need to come her way, because at the end of the day, I don't probably think it's as the healthiest. And my parents has even said, more so my dad, he's like, Jeff, I did it wrong. Like, I did it wrong for most. Yeah, seriously, he has told me that.
And what you said about the moving 80%, I think that's so huge. When because in marriage, there's inevitably there's going to be fights. There's going to be disagreements. Like Beck and I parent very differently. We always fight about that. But somebody's got to move, right? Somebody eventually has to go. Like, maybe I'm more of the problem, even if they're not. Like, they have to take that responsibility of like, okay, maybe I'm 80% and kind of make that bridge that gap. And I think that's a key thing that a lot of people don't figure out. Just in ministry, we see people all the time that like, well, my wife does this, my wife does that. I'm like, well, what are you gonna do about it? Are you gonna wait for her to change, or are you gonna do something about it?
And with Erica, what I've had to learn is that me helping her discipline the kids or parent is just showing her support. Because I'd get on her and go, why are you talking to him like that? Like, you guys fight like you're married. But especially, like, her and my son are the same person. So I watched them, I'm like, I know how this is gonna end. It's gonna end well. And so I watch it for a minute, and then I jump in and grab him and go,
that's right.
I don't care what your mom says or how you perceive it, you can't do that. And for her, it's like, thank you for supporting me.
Yeah.
Thank you. Because then the way she parents and then the way I parent will lead to us bickering and fighting.
Yeah, totally.
But when I realized, like, hey, this is my way to serve my wife and support her, is alleviate that stress from her of having to raise her voice and start yelling and getting him to do things, when I can just step in and go, you're gonna do that, you're gonna do that, quit fighting with your mom.
And the two components you mentioned, grace and discipline are both needed, right? Like, there's times where you lean into grace, there's times where you, if you never lean into anything, kids just run wild, and if you lean into everything, then they get crushed. And so there's like that.
Or even
balance.
If you lean into if you lean into it all the time, it becomes like that noise, that white noise. They're like, I'm out. Like, they're not going to listen to you. They stop if everything's a 10.
Yeah.
So just trying to be able to find that balance with them. And she and I parent way differently.
Totally.
She's much more structured than I am. It's like, I just need you to do it at some point.
So if you're willing to share, Adam, I'd love to hear you talk about like the anger that was in your house and how that impacted you. And
I mean, so the anger that was in my house, it was not a place of peace. Maybe not the entire time. Sometimes you look back and you paint the picture as if it was the whole time. So I don't actually know how accurate my memory is of my entire childhood, but especially as I started to realize, like, yeah, the way my dad treats my mom, we normalize what we grow up with, right?
Sure.
And so, but yeah, knowing that there's something off there. So most of the dysfunction, most of the anger and yelling was in my parents' marriage, from my dad to my mom. When it came to discipline toward me, I actually look back and I'm like, I probably needed him to press in more. Like I needed more. He beat me every once in a while, but I probably needed some more beatings. One thing I loved about that, what my dad did spank me, I mean, when I was younger at least, he always practiced coming back into the room. He'd let me stew, and I'd be so pissed, man. Wow. Like I do this because I love, and I like, it would make me more upset. Like, if you love me, you wouldn't spank me,
right,
or whatever. And so
I can picture little ads doing that.
Yeah, and so so I think one of the things that I had to learn in my own journey, even with anger, is that, I mean, the literature will tell us that anger is a secondary thing, and it's mostly rooted in hurt. So a lot of my anger is actually self-protection from not being vulnerable with how I've been hurt, and it's almost the easier. It's an easy cover for the hurt that's there, and so the explosiveness, the high volume, I've been really pretty committed to not going there. Like just and everyone I can say I've been pretty good. I have a pretty good track record of not like losing my lid.
Man, that takes discipline for not.
It does. Every once in a while, my last little slip up was actually pretty recent. It was at the dinner table. My son had, my 15-year-old son had shared something at community group, and I wasn't there. Andrew and I are in community group together. So he was really great to do this. He's like, hey, here's an update. Here's what the kids shared at community group. Yeah. And Aiden had shared about how he needs to slow down and not react when he doesn't agree with somebody, because he's very argumentative. He's just very combative, and he's like his dad. Like his dad. I had a nickname. A friend gave me a nickname, the Anti. Like I was just against whatever. It didn't matter what it was. Even if I really didn't disagree with you, I'm just going to disagree because that's my style or whatever. Side. And so, so he started in at the dinner table, and I said, "What did you share last night at community group?" And I wanted him to talk, and I said, "You're doing that right now." And then he argued with me that he wasn't doing it right now, and I hit the table, and I yelled, and I could just immediately. I knew my wife Shaylee was not cool with it or whatever, and what I found out later, actually, and this convicted me. What I found out later was that at our community group, we always start with kids. When we ask them a question, we were trying to model and practice authenticity with them. Is that night in community group, Aiden actually led the discussion with the kids. Wow. Like normally we do it with adults. Yeah. And even though in the moment at the dinner table he was off, he was wrong. In my anger, I wasn't able to even. It wasn't a healthy way of leading. Sure, I was throwing back his own confession in his face. Mm-hmm. Oh, what'd you talk about at community group last night? Oh, you're not doing that right now? Okay, why don't you be obedient to Jesus?
That usually goes well, right?
As if that's effective methodology, right?
Yeah.
And then later hearing how awesome he was at community group to facilitate the kids, I was like, what a jerk, I think a classic dynamic. I mean, this is for those of us that grew up with a broken relationship with our dads. And I think there's some degree or another for each of us. Yeah. And I'm always careful when I talk about my dad now because there's been healing, because I don't want to paint a picture that it was all bad. My dad, we have a great relationship now. It wasn't always that way. As we talked about earlier, my dad softened as he became a grandpa, and different things like that. But yeah, as a teenager growing up, I remember making this internal vow, I'm never going to be like my dad. And the harder I fought to not be like him, the more I became like him. Because I wasn't fighting that battle. I wasn't in the right way. And so I think what what finally resolved was a lot of healing that allowed me to actually be grateful, to see a bigger picture of my dad, to understand why he got the way he was. He didn't have, his father died when he was 7. He was the oldest of 3 brothers, and he was in rural Arkansas, and his mom was not quite all there. And so he grew up.
Did you catch it?
Did you get it?
Almost. Trying again.
He grew up dirt poor in rural Arkansas.
Yeah.
Would often go to bed hungry if they literally didn't procure their dinner at the local pond or kill a rabbit or whatever. And so there it is. It's with me now.
Squirrel.
Yep. So yeah, he. I mean, I love the gracious or charitable interpretation of other people. I think this is the filter Jesus calls us to, is this idea of like, man, they're doing the best with what they had. Right? To choose to interpret someone else that way, they're doing the best with what they had and with where he came from. And so...
And that's important for men as we wrestle through any dad issues that we have, to like separate ourselves and say, I don't want to be like them, but I don't have to stay mad at them either. I have to acknowledge this has caused pain in my life. You know, there's hurt there, but I ultimately need to overcome it with Jesus' help. Yeah. And know that, a lot of dads, like, man, they didn't have even a foundation, like a starting point. They started, like, you know.
And that there are some things that I can look at my dad and say, I actually do want to be like him in that way.
Sure, yeah.
Like the morning prayer, like that idea of each day as a gift. I learned that from him, you know, because he grew up not knowing, like, for sure. I mean, he was in survival mode, you know, and not knowing where the next meal came from. And so he knew that. So I gained that from him. And I was able, as I grew out of the angry, rebellious, combative stage where my dad and I would like go at it, and I started to actually become an adult, I was like, well, okay, there's a bigger picture here.
I was never able to kind of like go at it with my dad until I called my dad. And I was like, hey, Dad, I want to talk to you. And I said, you know, I've been holding something for so long. You know, because I remember going to Christian universities and hanging out with, and they would say, hey, man, love you, man. And I remember the first time I heard another guy say, I love you. I was like, what do you mean you love me?
Hey, man.
Get up off.
Like, what?
Hey, I love you, bro.
Like, what? I'm okay now.
You're good? Okay.
But I was like,
You
what?
went pretty quick past that moment, though. I felt like you wanted it to last a little longer.
I did.
Let's
Can we
redo
stare into each other's eyes for a
Stop
minute?
it. 100% no. So, but anyway, so I told my dad, I said, Dad, I can remember maybe on my hand how many times you said, I love you. And man, I just wanted to, see, here's the thing. I was wanting my dad to probably say, Jeff, I'm sorry. You know, and so I was like, I thought, oh, okay, after this whole deal, like, I need to say, Dad, I forgive you. But through this whole process, I discovered, no, I need to ask my dad for forgiveness, because I was holding on to something. You know, he did me wrong, or once I discovered that, I was holding on to something for years against my father. I was holding it, and he didn't need to apologize, and I didn't need to say, Dad, I forgive you. I needed to apologize as a follower of Jesus Christ. To hold on to bitterness, to hold on to something that someone else did to me, we are not designed when we become a follower of Jesus Christ to hold on to that. So I had to ask for forgiveness. And you know what happened? We had a 2-hour conversation. We had the best conversation we had ever had in our entire life. Wow. He said, Jeff, well, Jeff, I need to let you know how I was raised. I need to let you know what my dad, whatever. Mm-hmm. He's one of 15 kids, raised on a farm.
Same parents.
Barely, yes, same parents.
Oh my God.
Barely even saw his father, was raised by his older sisters, on a farm, like all just, it was just so like, and he said, my dad, you're telling me like I barely said I love, my dad never told me he loved me. But I got
5 more than I did.
But right. Yeah. But I got to the point where I said, you know what? My dad loves me because there's a roof over my head. My dad loves me because there's food on the table. When you stop looking at yourself and look at the other person, hurt people. But when I looked, I was like, oh my gosh, that's my dad's story. Yeah. And I wonder how many of us know our parents' story. Mm-hmm. Because then I think it might explain why, why what has happened, why it's happened.
And there's a difference between an explanation and an excuse.
Yes, right.
Right, because it explains it, but it doesn't excuse the fact that fathers are designed to express love.
Yes.
And that should be verbal, maybe not all the time or whatever. And so he might have missed there. but at least the explanation brings compassion
Totally.
and empathy.
Yeah, so it's good to acknowledge the hurt, right? We don't ignore the hurt just because we want to do the right thing. We acknowledge the hurt, but then we make sure that our hearts are right, that we don't like hold them accountable for our actions or hold it over their head, or even that we have to tell our dads everything that we're upset about.
Right.
Like,
Sure.
I mean, I don't want to hear that as a dad. Like, I'm doing my best, and some of these dads that are screwing up are doing the best that they know how to do. And you forget that dads need encouragement too, because you see them as this figure that's like looming over you that you expect them to get it right, and they probably feel insecure about how they did, right? And
totally.
To pick out the things that are like, man, this was really good about how you fathered me. Thank you for doing that. You know, we may want to do better. We may want to change things, all that stuff, but they don't need to hear all that. You know.
Which, by the way, after that, when that phone call ended, before it ended, he said, Jeff, how about we do this? Every time we're on the phone, every time we see each other, we tell each other, I love you. And so we've done that ever since.
I love that.
I mean, so you're talking about over 15 years.
Wow, that's beautiful, man.
Yeah, it's really, it's
My dad.
You made me a little teary-eyed, bro. Well, that's cool. I mean,
it's
the
awesome,
love between father and son, I think that it's a beautiful thing. That
When
God's
people
called
hear
us.
me get off the phone with my dad, it's always love you, bless you, have a good day. People are like surprised. I still do that. But going back to something you said when you talked about the things about your dad that you don't want to repeat or see, I never saw my parents fight or argue.
Dang.
And then suddenly they're telling us we're getting divorced.
Right.
Wow.
That, like, I think that's where it came out of nowhere for us.
Sure. It's a very different kind of.
Yeah, and so I think that at times, at least with my wife, when we argue, it's like, I love you enough to be able to disagree and be here anyway. Like, I think some twisted way in maybe my own mind, I'm going, this is okay. Let's just not argue in front of the kids.
Right.
Yeah.
But then the kids circle back around. Are you guys okay? It's like, yeah.
It's important to tell them that, hey, sometimes we disagree, but we work through it because we love each other.
And they need to see that.
Yeah, and they need to know that that's a part of a relationship.
It's I think, fighting clean. Because when I hear somebody, like you've heard the couple who's like, we never fought before. How long have you been together? 6 years?
You are a
Something
liar.
really jacked with y'all's relationship.
Yeah.
You're either a liar or you're hiding a bunch of stuff.
Right. And so,
or you live in separate houses.
So I think that there are some, I mean, and I mean, one of those guys' rules are meant to be broken. I'm not a rule follower or whatever, but like there needs to be rules or guidelines for fighting clean. One of my little fun phrases is always and never, or almost always never true. And pay attention to how much you use the language in a fight with your wife. You always. You never did it.
And then we convince ourselves that that's true, even though it could have been twice.
And so we've actually gotten pretty good. I have like an alarm that goes off at the beginning of our relationship, not just to fight cleanly in this way, but just as a general principle that divorce would never be a threat. The D word is not in the dictionary for us.
Absolutely.
And it's just not an option.
Absolutely.
And so I think maturity in a marriage or in a relationship, I've learned it's not so much how much or little you fight, how quickly do you rally?
Yeah.
I think that's huge, because in our early years, the first 10 years when we weren't well, like it would be days, and days would turn into weeks, and weeks might turn into a month, and it's nuts. And so I think now, I mean, if we go 24 hours by the grace of God and hit the healing in his marriage, 24 hours is like almost unbearable now. Like we just got to work it out. Now, I don't know if we always do it before the sun goes down.
Well,
Pastor Matt and Tammy stay up late apparently, so that they can.
we used to
sleep it off. We sleep it off.
Right.
So we used to do the scripture said, don't let the sun go down in your anger. So we try and settle it, but it'd be like 2 a.m. It would just get worse and worse. And what we didn't know that it was okay to disagree and to still be committed to each other. And one of the things I finally said to her after a couple of years of fighting is, I love you more than being right. It was just like in a moment, and I just stopped. And I really had a lot to say that I didn't say, and it was hard, and that like changed everything for her. She's like, oh, I'm safe. Like, we don't have to fight about everything because I know that you're committed to me, and I don't have to prove that I'm right in order for you to continue loving me.
Satan wants to destroy and tear apart my marriage, your marriage, your marriage, your marriage.
The family.
I'm telling you, there's been moments or times I think I might have told you this, Andrew. There have been moments or times when something goes really well, and I mean really well in Nick and I's marriage, or we went through something really difficult, and there's moments where God's really trying to heal that, and then it's like clockwork.
Right on the heels.
I mean, right on the heels. Yeah. There's something that happens, and we just, I mean, it's like tearing us apart.
Yeah.
And so just even that understanding, that's why couples need to pray together. That's why couples need to like have their devotional times together. That's why couples need to go. You know, I had a pastor.
Okay, I don't do devotional time with Becca.
That's okay. That's okay. But that's why I'm here to help you. That's why I'm here to help you. One of us has got to be Jesus. And I'm telling every single time we have done that, so, you know, whether it be my wife or myself, every time we've done that, it just like completely breaks up all of the junk and the mess that's been happening for the last 3 hours. Like, you know what, honey? I'm sorry. I am so, and really mean it, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry.
Or at least mostly mean
I'm
it.
sorry,
Yeah.
you know?
Don't roll your eyes.
Like, because at the end of the day, what's important? What's important is this relationship.
Right.
And us growing from this, and us understanding that it's Christ. Like, this is a team. You know, you were talking about your kid, like, hey, like if my kids are mouth, hey, that may be your mother, but that's my wife.
Right.
Well, and one of the reasons that we fight, I think, is because, you know, everyone has a dad issue, even if you had a great dad, right? There's deep down, dad can't fulfill the insecurities that are inside of us. We still grow up with insecurities. Am I man enough? Am I tough enough?
Totally, man.
And we display those to our wife by arguing, fighting, trying to prove ourselves right and manly enough. And it's so foolish because we end up losing out on the relationship with them, right? In order to prove that we're man enough or tough enough. And it's self-sabotage, which is crazy. Well, dude, I'm ready to get up and get moving. You guys ready?
Yeah.
So I think we should go.
Sitting here.
Well, some of us like to move a little bit more.
No.
So some of us can't like just sit down and lose weight like our brother Jeff here.
As he's eating his bag of potato chips.
Those are as healthy as carrots.
Let's throw some axes.
What?
I feel like that's a manly. We're in the mountains.
That's
Let's
a
throw
natural
some
next
axes.
thing to do.
Let's go do that.
You've been doing a whole bunch of things that brothers don't do.
You got the lumberjack shirt on?
Well, brothers do it now.
I'm trying to fit in.
I did not ask you to wear that.
Wait.
All right, let's go. Let's go. Yeah. Let's do this. Throw some axes.
Hey guys.
Jeff, Tony. All right.
Oh.
All right.
What's up, bro?
Dude, don't.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry.
Hey, man.
I recognize this guy.
So, are you guys gonna show us how to throw this thing? Is that what
Good. Yeah.
All right. How quick are you gonna go?
Yikes.
All right.
Oh.
Wow.
Oh.
Nice job.
Oh yeah.
See you, dude.
Oh.
Is that like the?
That's not
the handle. The handle.
That's something.
Oh, dude, you almost got yourself.
And it broke.
Oh, handle.
That's a handle.
We are not doing that.
Oh, right.
I'm splitting wood, y'all. All right, come on.
Oh, that was cool, man.
That's called a slip and slide. Just slip and slide.
That was pretty cool. That was the coolest one. Hold on, wait. You always have a crazy look. Yeah, swing it back. Whoa, okay.
That's called a step two.
That was fun throwing axes, guys. Great job. Jeff and I definitely won. Yeah, we made it too. But I was thinking this is maybe a little cheesy, but you know, sin is missing the mark. You know, and we were sinning often.
Right.
And I think a really important thing that I'd love to just discuss today, because I think it's important in our lives, is the issue of sexuality and just how easy it is for us as men to fall into sexual sin. It's lurking at our door, even if we're not consistently falling into it. It's always there. We're confronted with it every day. It's challenging. It's easy to fail. And so
this guy Tony, he leads our men's sexual freedom ministry.
Awesome.
And so I was thinking it'd be cool for him to just share, like, how do you see sexual sin affecting the men of our church, and kind of what are some of our strategies to overcome that?
I see, I see it wreck a lot of lives, and I think, when you're involved in it, especially as a younger guy, and I can speak from experience there as well, but you don't think about what the costs are, down the road, and what seems fun and pleasurable and joining in with what everybody is doing, and ends up having long-term ramifications. Gets carried into our marriages, feeds into isolation. I think for me along the way, I didn't realize how big of an impact it was having on my relationship with God, and it was constantly something that was between me and God, and I didn't know how to deal with it, and I see that in the guys we get to help all the time, and the secret is getting it out of the way and having that intimacy with Jesus, so that we're not addicted to the sexual sin stuff.
Yeah. Why do you think guys fall into it? You see like hundreds of guys come through. Like what like drives them toward it? I think it's because it's so easy to be, being selfish is easy. Being selfless is hard. And from an addiction standpoint, when we're dealing with guys that are full on addicted to pornography, addicted to masturbation, addicted to affairs, or strip clubs. You see a lot of this stuff. When you're dealing at that level, selfishness is what's at the root of that. And it's really, I've kind of designed my life around getting what I want and when I want it and the way I want it. So I give myself permission to go to a strip club or go to a massage parlor or indulge in pornography. And so selfishness is always there at the root of it, and selfishness is easy. We're all born, that's the root of sin, kind of putting ourselves in the driver's seat. And so the challenge for us in MSF groups, men's sexual freedom groups, is how can we walk guys out of just a habitual selfishness and take them to a place where they start learning to get out of themselves and help other people, and not hide all these things that they've been doing that's just destroying their lives and relationships. Yeah. What do you think it breaks in our relationship with God? You said it keeps us from Him. Like what breaks? I think as a man, what I always try to do with guys and myself is I want to be the guy that God designed me to be originally. Amen. I don't want to be this false version of myself that I kind of created myself into. Right. Yeah. And so what I see is we pursue sexuality in place of God, and so we just end up missing God because we've made sex God, and we use it's a spiritual problem we have. Pastor Matt says it all the time from the pulpit. You can't solve a spiritual problem with a physical solution. But that's exactly what sex addiction is. We deal with things like fear, anxiety, worry, regret, grief, go on down the line of all of the spiritual kind of forces that we're constantly impacted by. And we respond to those with a physical solution, like porn or masturbation or going to a strip club. And we use those things to kind of soothe ourselves. It doesn't work because you can't solve that spiritual problem with a physical solution. Right. It's the same with alcohol or drugs. It just doesn't work. It's a poor counterfeit, of God, really. Yeah, no, that's good. That's wise, man. Joel, I was just thinking about if it's okay to say, you waited till you were married to have sex? Yeah. And how were you able to do that with just the temptations surrounding you? You've been married for 5 months?
Yes, 5 months.
Yeah. Congrats. Getting to have some married sex. We'll talk about that in a little bit.
Right, yes.
You're here.
Man, I mean, I don't think it was easy at all. I think especially with seeing all the guys around me that were kind of endeavoring into sex and kind of in this spot, I think even it was harder growing up in the church and almost like keeping up this image of like being pure, especially as like a high 3 on the Enneagram. I think it made it even harder. Like, oh, this is the Christian guy. He grew up in church. Oh, he's been pure. I wore a purity ring like until I was married, and it's like made the pressure even higher.
Yeah. For sure.
And it was just guys around me, people asking real questions, people giving me real community, and just a space to just talk about struggles that I think made it possible, because in today's culture and like looking at other young adults, like we just have a big desire for just immediate satisfaction.
Right.
And with social media and everything just being at the tip of our fingers, like pornography being right there, makes it even easier, like when you're feeling those things that Tony was talking about of guilt, shame, just an easy solution. And so it's not easy, but community was key.
Yeah, that's huge. Can I ask a kind of personal question?
Sure.
Was it hard for you to transition from, okay, we're waiting till we're married to have sex, and then all of a sudden, like, okay, you're good. And you don't have to get into details about that necessarily, but like,
unless you want.
But was that challenging for you? Like, just to, because I think a lot of what the world says is you got to try it out, right? Then you know if you're compatible, blah 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 blah. You know, I have tons of stuff to say to disagree with that, but
Absolutely.
how was that experience for you?
Yeah, I mean, it was hard, especially in my specific situation. Like, I was with Desi before we were married for 3 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's a good amount of time.
So, and I feel like I knew like probably 6 months in that I wanted to marry this girl, but just with situations, I feel like we waited, and so I think that made it even harder. We were engaged for a year, which wouldn't recommend in retrospect. Yeah. So even at that point too, it's like, well, especially as we got like closer, like a month away, it's like, okay, like
married.
A month from now we will be having sex, but like, and there's not much of a difference, and it's hard to have that perspective. So yeah, it wasn't easy at all. Fortunately, Desi, I think, was very good at just drawing that line, like, no, we're not doing it, even though I'm like, well, what about now? We're right there. So yeah, I mean, yeah, not easy at all.
What would you say just about so a month out, you're getting married, like, it's easy to say we're married in God's eyes. Like, why is it important to wait, like, till the day that you stand in front of people and sign the paper?
Yeah, I mean, that's the way that God designed sex, is to be between a married man and a married woman, and just even seeing how people outside of that context living their lives, and just seeing how that's destroyed them, I think, has helped me, like, kind of, okay, like, the end's here. And even just that I mean, I knew that we would be married and that we would be together, but there's not that finality of it until, like, you get to the wedding, and you say the vows in front of as many people as that were there. For us, it was
COVID wedding.
Yeah, it was like only a few people, but still, I mean, it was in front of people, and I think it's that commitment. And just putting it on the line of, like, okay, this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm committing to God. I'm committed to being with her for the rest of our lives. So.
Yeah.
Can I add to that?
Yeah, please.
I just think it's so important especially for young people. And I wish I had understood this when I was your age. But I think a lot of around marriage revolves the value that we put on ourselves and that we put on our wives. And, if we're looking at our fiance or our wife as an object to take from, that's back to the selfishness piece I was talking about, then there's no reason for us to wait, right? Yeah. But the truth of the matter is, these women are God's daughters, and they're worth waiting for, and we're God's sons, and we're worth honoring them in that way, and that's the way He designed us to be, just like you said, the way God designed marriage. And when you break all that up at the beginning and you do it the wrong way, it takes a lot of work to put all that back together.
Yep, you're right.
Not just in a physical relational sense, but in a emotional and spiritual sense. The wreckage that comes from having premarital sex and being experienced with multiple people before you get married, man, it's a tough ball of yarn to untangle down the road. And you know, praise God, it's possible. You know, and the Lord is good, and He makes a way for us to do that. But we don't have to live that way. Right?
Yeah. So how long have you guys been married?
My wife and I have been married 33 years.
Oh, that's great. That's awesome, man.
Just a few months off.
Yeah.
Almost there.
So, like, how have you just learned to overcome those things you described, like premarital sex, like other relationships? Because, you know, I think a lot of guys get hopeless, like, well, I've already screwed up, I've already messed up, I already broke what God said I was supposed to do, especially if you grew up in the church like you did, Joel. Then you know the expectations. If you mess up, then it's like, well, I've already messed up, it doesn't matter anymore. How do you begin to repair that?
Yeah, we call that the F it. You know, when you get to that place where I've already screwed up, so I might as well go screw up somewhere. Just F it.
Yeah.
But I think the way to repair it is to pursue God and to, you know, to put, you know, when you're addicted to sex or porn or masturbation, or even if you're dabbling in it, you know, the amount of energy that we would put into hiding our browser history and deleting emails and you know, deleting apps and, oh my gosh, did my wife see those things on my phone? If we would put the same amount of energy into pursuing a relationship with Christ, none of this would be an issue.
Wow, brother.
So,
wow, brother.
you know, what I really just try to push guys to do, and you know, the guys, the leaders that we have in these groups, man, it's just get close to Jesus. Jesus is better than pornography. Amen. Jesus is better than masturbation. Jesus is better than premarital sex. He's better than any kind of sexual experience that we could drum up on our own creativity. And if we just would get close to Him, it replaces all of those desires. So that's the answer.
What does He replace it with?
I think He replaces it with a spiritual renewal, from a spiritual sense of, you know, instead of having to live life at the whim of fear and anxiety and worry, and you know, having to use these things to soothe myself of those things, Jesus replaces. He makes a way for me to stand in place of those things. I think masturbation in particular is the thing that really reduces our relationship with Christ. It just waters it down. You know, it replaces courage, it waters it down with shame. And so I think what recovery does is it makes a way for us to be able to walk through life as more than conquerors, you know, like Paul says. That's the way he wants us to live. He doesn't, you know, I'm gonna make a terrible quote, but from Mark Driscoll I read in a book, he said, you can't storm the gates of hell with a bottle of lotion in one hand and a box of Kleenex in the other.
Wow.
You know,
Wow.
and as awful as that sounds, it's true. Because sexual sin just reduces our manhood. You know, it incapacitates us, and
we feel like a man for a second, and then crushed, like
and then we're just worthless.
Yeah, literally. Seriously.
No, that's good. Man. So you know, some of you guys as pastors, how have you just wrestled with sexual sin? And learned to overcome it. Has it changed in being a pastor? Did it make it more difficult or easier?
Yeah, I mean, so like I think back to, I remember my dad bought a black box when we were a kid. You guys remember the old black boxes? Yeah. And it would give you every channel in the world for free. Right. Oh. I remember that was the first time I was exposed to porn, and I remember my dad knowing the channels were there, but like, hey, just, you know, make sure you're not watching these channels. And I'm like, sure. Okay. I'll wait till you leave the house then. And I think about like those were natural, like those habits became like consistent. Like you'd watch porn, or even like not too long ago I had to talk with my wife, and I go, I noticed that when I've got something big coming up or there's that anxiety or stress, it's like, you want to go have sex? Or like, hey, and for her, she was like, oh, I hadn't noticed that. I just always thought you wanted sex. But, I do. I'm
anxious all the time.
I'm always anxious. But I think about how that becomes, so what you're saying like really speaks to me, because you start thinking about those coping mechanisms before. that you have, and now like the sense of struggle becomes shame. Like, right, you're up on the platform and the stage every week telling people like, hey, we're here for you and everything else, and you're sitting there going, I got things I'm struggling with that I need to make sure that I get to draw other people into. And it does make you feel, I'd say, even worse and isolated, because there's that standard there's that standard in our position that really, for me, freaks me out. And so, like the other day, I had to go to a funeral for one of my good friends from the police department. Young guy passed away, and I texted everyone in the thread. I go, hey man, these types of things are triggers for me. Like, I have to know what I'm wandering into and what what do I have to run from that day? What do I have to be open about, and what do I need to invite people into? But before coming on staff at the church, I was a detective and I worked sex crimes for 6 years. And I would say that sex crimes time completely desensitized me in so many ways. And there's also that sense that people will destroy their lives to pursue sex. And so that fear is there too, but there also is that natural urge as a man, when your wife's not available, or I don't think she'll kill me for sharing this. Like, we were having sex before we got married. And I think just from a very practical standpoint, you tend to get stuck in a relationship too. I mean, that's another thing I try to coach men through is you're living with someone, you're having sex with them, you're not married, and you think she's crazy and she thinks you're crazy. Why don't you just break up? And it's because their marriage or their relationship, right, is based on sex and that becoming what people go back to. So just from a practical standpoint. But when I think about it with Erica, it was like, it took a long time for us to develop like what were the healthy habits and practice in our marriages or in our marriage. And it's still hard because it takes a lot more for her to be prepared than me, but it's not an easy answer. And the thought of
just that you brought up that sex keeps us in relationships that maybe we shouldn't be in. So I think that's a really important thing. I think there's this natural God-given inclination when you have sex that you feel drawn to, maybe we should make it permanent. Not every guy feels that way. But I remember I went through that. I was engaged before Becca. It's when I was 19 years old, and we weren't having intercourse, but we were doing everything else. And I felt drawn to her, even though our relationship was toxic and unhealthy, and we had no business being together. But I felt drawn to like, maybe we should get married. So we got engaged, and it was like this kind of like, it just kind of pulls you in.
I was earlier just in the conversation starting to get emotional, and I didn't know quite why. And I think this is what I was honing in on, maybe as you were talking, Tony, is I think my heart breaks because I think that there are a lot of men in the church who want to change, and they just don't know how. They're stuck. I think the war within at least begins to have a desire for change. They maybe start coming to church, or they're made so much of a mess, and they get desperate. And then and they're miserable enough to want to change. The pain principle that I've shared is change happens when the pain of staying the same becomes greater than the pain of the change. Either way, there's going to be pain. Choose the better pain. Choose the better pain. And so, but what we start with initially is we're going to fight against the sin. And then I'm seeing this monster, this thing that's mastered and owned me for so long, that has control of me, and I'm going to start fighting. And in the recovery world, we call that white knuckling. And it's the force of our will to fight against it. And here's the deal: that can succeed for a little bit of time. And then when you're weak, when you're hungry, angry, lonely, tired, whatever. As much as you want to keep fighting, you're weak, and it gets you again, and we get defeated, and then the enemy sneaks in and says, see, you can't do this. Oh, you're just an addict. Oh, you can't really change, or whatever. The key is this. It's simple in concept and hard in practice. It's turning to Jesus. Instead of fighting the sin, I turn to Jesus. And it's Hebrews 12. We run this race with endurance by fixing our eyes on Jesus, the author and the perfecter of our faith. And there's freedom in that. And it allows him to be our strength in our weakness and all of those things. How do you turn to Jesus? It's pretty simple. It's all the basic things that we talk about all the time in church. It's worshiping. Yeah. That's one of our weapons, right? We worship.
That's right.
We stay in His Word. We hear from His Word regularly as we gather together.
Meet with other guys.
We're in community.
Yes.
That's how we turn to Jesus. Right. We turn to Him. We turn to His people. We turn to His praise. And so,
I want to say what you were saying in a different way. In our groups, guys that are stuck in that pattern, like you're talking about, we tell them there's three things that you need to get well. You need enough misery, and that's the pain that you're talking about. And then once you become miserable enough, that creates willingness. You need enough willingness to start doing things different. And that means maybe now you would be open to coming to a recovery group, or maybe going to a rehab, maybe doing a full disclosure with your wife. Now you're willing to do things differently because you know something's got to change. And then the third thing is humility. So misery, willingness, and humility. And the humility is the place that we get to where we can say, I can't do this on my own. I can't stop this. I've tried every pick and way in my own power to do it, and I just can't. That's the first step of the 12 steps of recovery. I'm powerless over my addiction, and my life is unmanageable. And the humility is what takes us to Jesus, because God opposes the proud. Gives grace to the humble.
Wow.
So as a pastor, not just how have I dealt with my own journey in sexual sin against it, but I think breaking sort of generational patterns and shifting the narrative within the church from sex is bad, sex is bad, sex is bad, to no, let's actually talk about, let's reframe it as the beautiful gift that God has created. And then yes, and then let's start teaching our kids before the world gets to them. And I'll never forget being at a conference outside of Las Vegas, of all places, on church and the sexuality. I went to a breakout session. This executive director for internet safety nonprofit said, and this was years ago, the initial exposure to pornography right now is 8 years old. And so I've got to teach my boys about sex before 8, and all the Christian, old school, it's like, oh my God, or whatever.
And it's not even old school. Like, and I would say, man, I've talked to guys at our church that in our youth program, they're upset because we're talking to kids about sex. I'm like, if you haven't talked to your kid by the time they're in middle school, you missed a boat.
You missed a boat.
Like, you missed it by years.
That's right.
And like, that's the thing that I wish more men would stop being chickens about. Have the conversation. You talk about it with your buddies. Why can't you talk to your kids about what it is? They don't care when they're 8. They just go, oh, that's weird and gross and whatever. And they move on with their life. And that you tell them, like, we're the experts. If you want to know more about it, we'll tell you about it. If there's words you hear at school that you don't know anything about, come ask us. So we're the expert rather than the world who just gets it wrong every time.
Absolutely.
Every time.
Before 8, because I'll just do a quick plug if you want a tool for it. God's Design for Sex. It's a 4-part series. The second book is ages 5 to 8, and it's the full-on, doesn't pull any punches.
That's the one you gave me, right? When you had to talk with me?
And
No, but we did it with our boys, absolutely.
And before 8, here's how I describe it. It's pre-sexualized gross information. And so it actually is like buffered, because now it's not got all these attachments that are twisted from the world or shame or whatever. It's just like, ooh, that's gross, and they learn about it. And so recently when we were talking about this, about us talking about it at youth, my 12-year-old walks in the room, and our mutual friend is there, and he's like, Asher, you know about sex? And he kind of rolls his eyes, and he's like, I knew about it before, like, as soon as I could understand or something. Like, he's like,
years, but
I'm kind of,
what do you want to know?
He's 12. He's like, I've known about it for about 6 years now. So.
And I think as a pastor, anytime it's talked about, which is rare, it's always like, oh, I got everything together. I got everything in control. Everything is, and I would actually probably say in my life, as a pastor, I've seen it probably more at my door, and to confront it is actually what's really, really needed. What's so sad, I think someone said, in community and in talking about it with other guys, and then you even said, guys talk about sex. When they do talk about sex, it's always unhealthy.
Right.
Generally. It's amazing. My wife will hang out with a bunch of ladies and talk about sex and talk about marriage and what's that's like, and then I hang out with a bunch of my guys, and I come back home, and she's like, oh, how's Tom doing? He's doing fine. He's like, but here's something going on with his wife, and maybe they're not doing well with, with their sex life. I'm like, how do I know that? Like, I talk to
talking about the
Stephanie.
Dodgers.
And, seriously, like we never talk about anything like that. So we talk about vulnerability. We're so not vulnerable, period. And then this is an area where we need to be open and honest, because what we'll discover is that we're probably all thinking the exact same thing.
Yeah.
And that's actually why I love, I mean, guys, I've been a pastor for a while. I've been hanging out with a lot of pastors, and I've never heard pastors like Pastor Matt or our campus pastor and other pastors talking about real life stuff. You know, it was like last week, Adam knew I was home by myself and my wife was in Arizona, and he straight up like, hey, how you doing? I'm like, oh, I'm doing pretty good. Like,
How your eyes doing?
Like, he's like, no, really, how's it going, brother? How's it going? Like, I forgot what you said. Like, you staying? You said
I
something.
probably just said, hey, are you sexually sinning? Like, I probably didn't dance around the bush. That's not quite my style. But
So two things happened. I was like,
touching yourself other
wait.
than when you pee.
I was like,
Oh, man.
That's good.
thank you.
playing with your wiener?
My first thought was like, wait, what? I was so caught off guard because no man,
Welcome to Sandals.
and definitely no pastor,
dude.
talks or says or asks me questions like that. And then I was at the same time, I was like, wow, man, that was awesome. And then at the same time, like John Brown, he asked me like maybe a day before that. I'm like, wow, what a place where these men, they like, and Adam wasn't saying like, hey, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? Like, hey, man, like, how you doing? Like, because I want to be here to support you. I want to care for you. Like, hey, where are you at?
And here's the key to that. It's making a place where it's safe to be a struggler.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that's what I love about men's groups, and even being on staff at a church. Like, if you're afraid you're going to lose your job, or you're afraid of being ostracized from community, or that someone's going to push you away, you're way less likely to share. Because, like, I don't know if I'm safe. And what I love about the culture of Sandals is that I can share struggles before they get really, really bad.
Right. Totally.
And I know that I'm going to be safe. I'm still going to be loved, and I'm going to heal because I shared. I'm not going to go down that road because I got the opportunity to share. And I would just encourage any of you guys with that, or any guy, man. It's share before it's too late to share. You know?
Confess early.
Yeah,
Well,
confess early.
I get to think about, I think about our journey. How long was it been? 6 years, 6 years. I've gotten to like be mentored by you, which has been great. And you were the second person to come to me and go, I think you're going to leave your job and go into ministry. And I was like, dude, drugs are bad. Quit using them. And
Because you've been smoking.
and the first thing I did, I remember in that conversation, I go, yeah, not me. And he said, well, why not? And I threw how sexual sin had ruined nearly ruined my marriage, ruined me. I was like, nope, here are all the reasons why
I'm
not.
disqualified.
I'm just, and I remember you going, the fact you're sharing them with me means you're qualified. And I remember that hitting me so much differently. And I did the same thing to Matt. First time I met with Matt, I was like, you don't want me, and here are all the reasons why. And having that grace that we experience of, no, man, like that makes you more qualified, because you're going to be able to talk to people in a way that you understand what they're going through that many others don't.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, I think
And
sexual
it blew
sin's
me away.
unique in that it warps the way we see ourselves.
Yes.
Yeah.
100%.
And I see these guys in our groups when they come to a group and they've messed up, they've looked at something or they've done something they shouldn't do, and they're feeling all this guilt and shame, and they start like just self-flagellation, this just beating themselves up.
Totally.
Wow.
And I just had this conversation Thursday night with a guy, and I'm like, brother, if God designed you to have to beat yourself into submission, Jesus didn't need to go to the cross. That means you could have fixed yourself by just making yourself feel crappy. And that is so opposite of the real message of the cross and the real message of Sandals Church.
Right. It only means something if you're a sinner, right? And it's admitting that you're a sinner it's the beauty of, and it's easy to say it because we've heard it and we live in a quasi-Christianist culture where it's okay to talk about that, but like to feel it deep down and go, I know how bad I am, and it's ugly down there, and Jesus already paid for that. Like that's a beautiful thing that goes far deeper than anything else in this world.
And I think it could even, like, we talked about how sexual sin comes out of a place of selfishness, and when we sin and have all this guilt and shame, I think it also can turn into another form of selfishness. Like we think that, oh, I don't deserve that grace. Like I'm someone that's exempt from the grace that God give, and like who am I to be like the grace? Jesus dying on the cross wasn't enough to cover my sin, and I think it can even turn into another sense of selfishness. I know for me, it's been if I feel that shame and then think through of like, oh man, maybe that's pride, and maybe that's me feeling like I can't.
Yeah, self-pity.
Self-pity, and it's selfishness in a different form, but it's still, yeah.
Yeah. So I talk to young guys quite a bit, and I think there's a growing movement of younger people that are actually curious about sexual purity. What would you guys say to young guys who are desiring, to have a healthy marriage, sex life down the road, but that feels like really far away? People are getting married later. What would you say about just how do you stay pure? Like, what does that road look like?
I think two things come to mind. One is just some serious compassion for someone who's young and wants to do it right and do it God's way in today's world. Like my heart goes out to brothers who really do want that and desire that, because it's not an easy path.
Yeah.
And so I honor young men who are single to do that. The second thing I would say is this, is just about singleness, is, marriage and family within the church is a normative type thing. But I think in particular the Protestant Christian church doesn't have a very robust theology of singleness.
I would agree.
And it here's what it ends up coming across like, especially for generation studies that are being done about people not getting married, maybe at all. Like it's just not on their plate, and yet there's this narrative that often makes them feel like they're less than, like they're incomplete until they're married. And I just want to say that's not right.
That's true.
And I mean, there's biblical warrant for that. In fact, Paul asks if you can do it like me, single, do it. But if you burn with fire, and so.
And what purpose did he say that?
Sorry,
Paul.
The burn. Oh,
no,
sure. For the sake of the kingdom, that your attentions wouldn't be divided, because the reality is our first ministry is our wife and our kids, and there is a lot of attention that's needed there. Whereas Paul was free to spread the gospel, to be a tent maker, and to work hard and do all those things because he was single. And so the tail end of that, and this is what I would say too, is this is a little bit countercultural, is I would rather my 4 boys get married young and have to struggle in their marriage relationship than to sexually sin. Like I'd rather them put out the fire.
Amen.
And getting married young is like a weird it's just so shocking if somebody's like getting married and they're 22. You know,
Joel, you're 23 when you got married?
I was 23.
Yep.
23. Yeah.
And I mean our bodies. Here's the thing: our bodies are designed to get married in our mid-teens.
That's right.
They are.
No, they really are.
And in modern culture, when you're waiting till you're 20-something, it's almost a setup for failure. And so, I would encourage, and I think a lot of young people are afraid of commitment, or they have this myth that they're going to feel a certain way, or they're gonna one day be ready. And I call that the myth of readiness.
Yeah.
At some point, you realize love is an act of the will. It's a choice. It's a decision, and you just say, "I'm choosing you." And I'm choosing you for life.
Yeah.
And you exercise your will and you get married.
A couple things that I'd want to discuss is, one, I think the myth that getting married takes away, like it solves your sexual problems. So that like, okay, now I can have sex, so now everything's going to be fine, and I'm not going to struggle with pornography, I'm not going to struggle looking at other women. Right. Everybody made noise, so like everybody knows that doesn't work, right? Anybody want to speak specifically to that? Like, why is that not the cure?
I will.
Yeah. Thank you, Jeff.
Yeah, sure. The first thing that comes to my mind is, prior to meeting Nikki, I would probably say there was probably about 3 years where I was kind of sober, pure from looking at pornography. But pornography for such a long time, starting in high school, at the end of high school for me, it was just like there and, in and out of college or whatever, and then even my time, in my 20s. But I'm telling you, when I married my wife, And then obviously masturbation goes with that. A couple things. One, the pornography, like all of the junk that was in my mind, that it was like almost, I feel like I just got out of the place where it's finally like kind of getting out of my mind, but it's still there.
12 years.
12, well, really, almost 15 years,
15 years
with
total,
it, you know, purity-wise, sobriety as far as pornography. I mean, and it's still like will kind of creep in. I'll see, you know, we'll be having sex, or I'll see things about her and whatever, and I think, oh, I wish that was changed, or I wish that was like that. Which I'm telling you, that is because of pornography. That is because that was in my mind, and there was this beauty of Adam and Eve. They were naked and unashamed, you know, and so there was no shame. I'm sure Adam was like, man, you are beautiful, because this was the first naked woman he'd ever seen in his life.
Let's go.
You
The
know,
first and only.
you know. And so in a natural, real world, Nikki should have been the first woman I'd ever seen naked or anything sexual, you know, when it came to a female. However, that was, you know, upon meeting Nikki, like I didn't have sex with any girl. I did some other, girls. I did some other stuff. But man, the amount of junk that was in my mind, you know, it's like, oh man, Jesus, you had to say, if you even looked at a woman lustfully, Jesus, why you got to put that in there? You know, you've already sinned. And so there was so much sin. And on the other hand, the masturbation, where, I mean, that is just horrible, period. Absolutely, period. One of the things that was struggling, like, man, when Nikki is away, like, wow, like, oh my gosh, like, even, you know, like, wow, should I just, like, kind of get it over with? You know, I actually see that as cheating. I see that as cheating, because anything sexual should be with my wife. Anything sexual should be with my bride.
And masturbation trains us in selfishness, which is what we talked about, right?
Totally.
It's like how I want it, when I want it.
Yes. It's all about me. It's all about you. And so that's,
I want to just talk about the young people, and I want to challenge young guys, because see a lot of them, and we're seeing a lot of them come to our groups, and a lot of them do have hearts. They're like, hey, I can recognize this is becoming a problem for me,
awesome.
And I want to solve it before I get married. I want to challenge young guys, and I didn't have anybody saying this to me when I was 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20.
Totally.
Get a handle on, this is terrible, get a grip on pornography.
That's not better.
Get a grip on.
No handle, no grip.
No pun intended.
No hand.
Right.
My bad.
No, it's all good.
Get your mind around.
Learn to live without pornography and without masturbation as a crutch for you to function emotionally and spiritually.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
That's my challenge to you, because here's the truth. Here's the truth.
That's good.
Mic drop.
You're not gonna die if you don't masturbate.
Come on now.
Okay. You're just not. And God actually created a function in our bodies,
the wet dream,
called a wet dream, so that we don't don't die.
To get it out.
Man, the garbage that you're talking about in your mind, Jeff. That's a real thing.
It is a real thing.
And think about if you worked on that before you got married, and you entered into your marriage when you're 20 or 19 or 21 or 22, and you can stand up on that altar and you can know in your heart that I've waited for this day. I've kept my mind pure, I've kept my body pure, and this woman is worth it, and I'm going to give everything. My heart, my mind, my body, my spirit, I'm going to give it all to her. And man, I wish someone had explained to me that that's what I needed to do, and that's what would fulfill me.
And like, I think, media squashes like married sex as like lame and boring, and like the only kind of sex is illicit, whatever. And like what I would say, married 17 years now, Joel, and this is, hope for you and guys who've been married less. It just keeps getting better when you work on your relationship, when you focus on all the intimacies, emotional and conversational and all that stuff, and then work on the sexual stuff. Have the conversations. That's difficult to do. Just have conversations about, hey, this is what we like or don't like, or this is the struggles that we're having. But it just keeps getting better, and like I'm in my 40s now, and I would have thought like, ooh, 40-year-olds having sex, that's gross. Well, it just keeps getting better.
Come on,
right?
like,
and
it's awesome. It's friggin' awesome.
I would venture to say that I have more and better sex than any playa out there.
Oh, come on now,
yeah, dude.
That's because you a prayer.
Give me your number.
Right.
Yeah.
Give me. Right.
Go the last year. Go the last 10 years. And
How many times?
Okay.
Yeah.
Dude,
And
same.
I need to give the flip side of that coin, because
sir.
as someone who hurt myself sexually, you know, as a young man and as a young married man, and did things that were damaging to myself and my wife, we struggle now because of that.
Because of that.
I'd love to be able to say I'm in your camp, but I've caused damage. I mean, I've hurt us, and that, you know, take that as a warning if you want, if you're a young man. But the damage is real, and it's.
I appreciate you sharing that, man.
Well, yeah, and I don't mean to say that in that, you know, sex doesn't happen. It does, and you know, it's beautiful for us. But it certainly doesn't happen the way either of us had hoped it would.
Right.
And I'm the one that ruined that. And so, you know, I get to take responsibility for that, and it's my holy honor and my holy privilege to walk through that with my wife, and we get to work through it together and repair that. And the Lord meets us in that. Thank God. But
yeah, and Tony, what I should have shared to your point is we just celebrated 20 years of marriage, and I call it the tale of 2 decades. So in the first 10, I did a lot of damage. You know, not as much sexually, but my other sin, my other addiction to pot affects, I mean, it trickles down and out or whatever. And so part of where I first heard what you just shared, this like hope, this like gospel of good Christian sex, was some mentors that came in and they're like, oh, it only gets better or whatever, right? And I just never heard that. I was like, I didn't believe it. And of course, the first 10 years of our marriage, I wasn't really following Jesus or whatever, right? And so it's taken
10 years.
Yeah, I mean, 10 years to get to where we are now. But I want that to be an encouragement. I mean, the classic, you know, it's you get the ball and chain, and like you're gonna be locked into that. You're only gonna have sex with one woman for the rest of your life. Like, well,
yeah, and just the negative messages, like even in the church. I mean, it's changed now with Sandals, you know, and other churches like it. But it was like talk a bunch about sex before you're married. Don't do it, and then nobody talked about it when you got married. So it was like, do people keep doing it? Like, is that like a thing? Like nobody
you had 4
talked
boys,
about
you had
that.
It 4 times.
Or if they talked about it, it was so awkward that you're like. And, you know, I don't know, it's just, but like talking about it positively and saying like, dude, it's awesome. Like, it's great because you have safety in the relationship. You love each other. You're for one another. And you get to enjoy it together. And it's an incredible thing.
the way it was designed to be.
That's right.
But one of the things I think we need to talk about too is, especially for the young married, are the challenges that are going to come when the expectation is we're going to have sex all the time.
Right.
Yeah, like newly
12
married
days a
sex,
week.
Like,
I mean,
yeah, there are 12 days.
How many days are in a week?
You might be wearing yourself out and injuring yourself with each other. But then
we tried that on our honeymoon.
But then careers happen, right?
Yeah.
The stress of careers and outside stresses that come in. Then you get kids.
Come on, brother.
Then you get, you know, somebody gets crazy and wants a puppy, and you're like,
why?
You know, why did we get a puppy? And then why? Oh, let's get rid of the grass and put green rocks in there because I don't want to mow the lawn. Like all these stresses that come with it, that you're just like, at the end of the day, you're like, I just want to go to bed. And having that empathy for your wife, where she goes, I just want to go to sleep.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't.
Totally.
And trying to figure out, okay, so what is that middle ground? Like, how do I meet your needs at the same time you're meeting mine? And I say that's an ongoing, always conversation, at least for us, when we have 2 little ones running around the house who dominate our time until 9 p.m. at night.
You definitely have to be intentional. Like, you have to work at it. You have to prioritize it.
You got to be
have
willing to talk about it.
Yeah.
You have to be willing to talk about it.
And if we didn't bring enough baggage on our own, it also takes 2 to tango, right? Marital sex also includes the woman playing a role as well, obviously.
Right, hopefully.
But just that there's baggage, there's sexual brokenness on that side of the street too, and that's why it requires the togetherness in the repair, in the learning together how to be intimate.
That's right.
I was going to say that is actually a really huge piece that I don't think a lot of men even understand or talk about. You know, my wife is, you know, I know we talk a lot about Enneagram. She's an 8 and a 1, like simultaneously 98%, and so she will let me know. She will let me know. And one of the things that, you know, because she's so open and honest with me and just like blunt, it is my job as a husband to also let her know how valuable she is. To also, my job is also to help repair. It's funny because I'm thinking like, oh, I got to repair myself so that I can be there for her. But what about all the knuckleheads and all the media and all the women and all the, and the church world that has brought her down physically, sexually, and so it's now I'm dealing with my own stuff, but it is my job as a husband, way more mine than hers, to try to build her back up. And so, I mean, this is just small stuff, but it's huge. Like, hey, honey, you look beautiful today.
Yep.
Hey, honey, I love your, like when she's naked, like in the bathroom, just say like, hey, honey, I love your body. I got to say lots of, and that's hard for me to say. It's difficult for me to say. I forget, I may think it, but I don't say it. And all of that, Joel, all that makes up the experience for sex, and that's really love. And so now, when it's time, like, hey, baby, you want to get it on? It's like I started it in the morning. I started at 9 a.m.
You were sowing some seeds.
I started at 9 a.m. and now 9 p.m. Come on, we ready to go.
Foreplay.
Right, exactly. It's all foreplay,
Yeah, I mean, I think that's been like Desi and I just had a conversation about that, like just a couple days ago. Of just like I think one of the biggest myths, and I think people warned me enough, but I think I still didn't believe it. But just because we're married, and we're only 5 months married, we don't even have that much time, like length of a marriage. But still, I think there's this myth that when we're married, my sexual desire can now be conquered. It can be answered. And I don't and sadly Desi doesn't want to have sex 24/7. What? Which is what? Weird.
Is she even a woman?
So, what?
Well, and we have to learn as men. I've experienced this. I can fulfill myself through my eyes even if I don't look at porn, right? Because there's so much to look at. You can kind of nibble all day long, and then the feast is at home.
I'm telling you.
And so I've had to train myself to have eyes just for Becca. And Becca's beautiful. Like I don't struggle thinking she's beautiful, but I do struggle nibbling throughout the day and snacking. And then it comes to I have to direct all of my spiritual attention to her. And that's something that we have to learn over and over again. And to another thing I was thinking as you were talking, Jeff, well, I was also listening to you.
No, thank you.
But
you should.
Made me forget now. Oh yeah, as we're caring for our wives who are maybe struggling with how they've been hurt by sexuality.
Yeah.
And the gift that we give to them is patience, it's understanding, it's not selfish, like we talk about. It's not about I have my needs. Like guys always say, well, I have my needs. Well, that's stupid. Like if you want to get your needs met, take care of her now, and you'll get the needs met a lot more often.
That's right.
But she goes first. And all of sex is about selflessness, right? It's putting her first, loving her, making sure she's comfortable, making sure she orgasms, not just worrying about your own.
That's a real thing. She goes first.
Oh yeah,
that's a real thing.
Got it. Yeah, totally. And those things are important, and that's how you have great married sex is by prioritizing those things. So this is great conversation, guys.
Are we all gonna go home and make it happen now? Or?
So I appreciate you guys just being real about that, and I'm sure there's tons more we could share.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, man, I'd love to just continue having good conversations. Thanks for being open.
Thanks, Tony.
Thanks,
for what
Tony.
You do. With our men's sexual freedom groups too. I just
so needed.
Yeah, it's a big
my
deal.
honor.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.
Hope guys will come hit us up and experience it.
Sure.
And tell your wives thanks for letting you share
Thanks,
as well.
Hopefully you told her ahead of time.
Yeah, I think so.
I didn't. I'm gonna ask for forgiveness.
I asked for permission because I have a secret private calendar event that's ETA. That's the estimated time of arrival. That's 14 days after menstruation begins, just in case you didn't know your biology. Biology.
Yes, biology.
And then ETD is estimated time of departure. She goes outside the camp. I need to know when.
You're so
No, that's a real thing. And here's what's so funny. She'd be like, she'll turn to me. She'll be like, when am I supposed to start? I'll be like, Tuesday.
Are you serious? I put her on the calendar. Becca's also grateful because she's like, when am I starting again? I'm like, we got 4 days, so let's make it happen.
Oh my gosh.
You want to do 4 days in a row? Let's go.
Clear to share this?
That's good.
Oh, no, that's what I'm saying. I asked for permission.
Yeah.
Can I share about ETA and ETD? She was like, go ahead.
All right, it was good talking. There's a spot I want to show you guys, so let's take a little hike up the road.
Sweet.
I think there's somebody up there we know.
Oh yeah.
Look at those.
Is that old man Crowley?
Been waiting for you.
Hey Tyler. Hey Daniel.
What's up?
Should we just have a seat over here?
Sure.
You prepare these rocks for us? Jesus goes to prepare a place for us.
Here we go.
Man, it's so great that we found you guys here because we've been having conversations all day about just difficult things we're working through and how to be men, and what better manly men than you guys to kind of speak into us.
I'd like to hear, if that's okay, from each one, a little bit of like what's been a specific struggle, and then where have you found yourself maybe wanting to escape from it. And I think from there we can then talk a little about maybe spiritual disciplines, because I think for each of you it might be a little different. So whoever wants to kick off, yeah.
Yeah, I think the primary emotional category that I experience is sadness. And so 2020 has been a very sad year on a lot of levels. A lot of things that just break my heart, both like that hit home like personally, but also just in our world. Unrest in our nation, COVID, turning everything upside down. And so my tendency when I begin to get really sad is to, there's a temptation to let what I'd call like a depressive state take hold. And sometimes where, I don't struggle with it on like a clinical level or anything like that. A lot of people do. And so there's, on a much smaller scale or lesser degree, the idea of like even wanting to get out of bed in the morning, right? Like there's been a number of days like that in 2020 for me. And so just resisting something as basic as getting up and getting out of bed and facing the day, you know? And so, I think that that's definitely, something to pay attention to, okay? Like what's going on in my soul. And that could be different things depending upon the day, I suppose. But so I think grief and sadness are something I tend to want to avoid. So
that's fair. What have been some ways in the past maybe that where you've given into harmful behavior, that sadness, the grief has come up, and suddenly you're choosing something is probably not good for you?
Yeah, I've alluded to this a handful of times in our conversations today, but I would typically go to chemical escape in the past. And so anything or everything that would just cause me to feel different, just to shift gears away from and out of facing really sad realities in my life. And as I had to work through recovery and healing from that, realizing even that started really young for me. My first 10 years of life, I lost a number of really close people to me. And so I was familiar with the loss of loved ones from an early age and the deep impact that had on me, And so I think numbing the pain, escaping the pain through some sort of chemical or another.
Yep, that's fair.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Adam. And we've shared stories, and I come from a very similar background, and you're one of the people I talk to the most about those temptations of wanting to change my mind state with chemicals, whatever, behavior, running away. And really, as we enter into this talk, the thing that I'm always reminded when I talk to you is how significant grace is for us as men. And I think it's easy to throw down things like, I need to read my Bible 3 times a day, I need to do this, I need to do that, I need to do, X, Y, and Z. And the reality is, what we need is the grace. It's not how many days we have clean. You can be happy about it, you can celebrate that, but it's the grace that we really need to cling to. There's nothing that you can do right now to earn it, and there's nothing you can do to lose it. It's a paradox. And I think so often us as men specifically, we go to work, we go get the bag, we go, this is my weekly report, this is my, I had a great quarter, look at my paycheck, stuff like that. We go out and we get and we achieve, and that's really wired into us. And you can't go out, you're never going to reach a point where God's like, all right, cool, no, yeah, you made it.
I think a lot of guys struggle with sadness on some level. It doesn't need to be as deep as maybe a depression or something that we need to treat with medication or something like that. But I think there's general levels of sadness we all wrestle through for one reason or another. So going back to your question, Bogey, about disciplines, I mean, one of the things I'd recommend for you, Adam, is practice of gratitude. Finding ways to, especially when you're feeling the sadness, but even when you're not, just get in the habit or the rhythm of finding things you're grateful for. And not just the general, like, well, I'm grateful I got health, or I'm grateful that I've got a good job. Like, those are good things to be grateful for, and I think they're easy things for us to kind of point to. But get really detailed. Man, I'm grateful that I've got this job, and part of my job allows me to do this thing that I really, really like to do, Or, man, I'm grateful that I've got, this friendship, and in this friendship, man, we can have really great conversation, or we really enjoy being together, and these are kind of quick examples, but I think it kind of hits the point of getting really granular, really taking a deep dive into gratitude. Because what happens is you start to spiral in the sadness, and what the deep dive of gratitude is actually starts to raise us up, because we're focusing on the things that are really specific and really meaningful in our life. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's good. Thanks.
Yeah. It's interesting, Tyler, you said something that really made me think of, and I think a lot of guys struggle with this, is that I spend a lot of time at work. I don't know if I would say I'm a workaholic, but because my work is different, right? It's ministry. It's I'm building the kingdom.
It's all for the kingdom.
Thank you. So I should keep on keeping on. But I know we've chatted about this before, but and some men I think are just workaholics just because they're workaholics, but I really love what I do. Yeah. I love my job. And I can be all consumed with my job, and I want to bring that home. That's always with me, So there's been many times where my wife is like, "Hey, be here." I'm on my cell phone. I pulled out the laptop, and even when I might be okay with that, she can tell, like, "Man, you look like you were just exhausted," just because I pour so much into my job, and when I come home, I don't have much left to pour into my wife and my kids. And so and that's been hard. That's been really hard. And then I find myself thinking, and again, we even talked about this. My dad, he worked. Very rarely did I ever see him show any kind of like healthy emotion to my mom, to us. I mean, he was he worked. He was a workhorse. And so here I am kind of pretty much doing the same thing. This is affirmation for me. This is how I'm valued. And I don't know, all that to say, like my first ministry, really, my wife and my family kind of get, man, not even like seconds or thirds. They get like fourths and fifths. And so that's been a struggle at different times in my life, but I would say that's the thread, the last 12 years of my marriage, of just pouring myself into work.
Yeah.
And and I could tell it's hard. It's hard for my wife, and my kids don't know how to express it because they're still super young. But what happens when they're teenagers?
Yeah, and I think that's not a very uncommon thing.
Yeah.
I
was thinking the same thing.
Yeah. Like, and especially now where home is work for a lot of people. Right. So there's not even a separate building that we're going to.
Yep.
And so I'll find like I have to take 5 minutes and just go sit in the bathroom or sit in the closet and just let that decompression happen. And very similar to you, my dad, we never went without. He provided financially, super hard worker, but not so much on the emotional side. And so as I'm getting older, it's almost like as men, and the times are so different, and it's now we provide financially, we need to provide emotionally.
Yeah.
And then we need to provide that stability too. Because if dad comes home and he's checked out and he's not emotionally connecting, it's not a stable person. A lot of men are feeling that, but not a lot of men are talking about that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a great point, Tyler, too, especially in today's sort of world, a lot of folks are working from home and those boundaries are really easy to blur. A question I have for you is like, what drives you to want to give so much to your work? 'Cause I think that's for guys, it's a common thing that we have, whether it's work or other interests, we have things that we give sort of an inordinate amount of time to. It could be fantasy football, like it could be golf. I mean, who knows, right? But we have these things that we give what I would call an inordinate amount of time to. We love it, right? It's a disordered love. We love it, and we love it sometimes above our family or above even maybe our work or above these things. And so these loves get disordered. And I'm curious what motivates you to want to give that much time to your work?
Good question. Probably I see the fact like, oh wow, I'm valued. You know, I have something to give. I'm valued. People need me. You know, and
yeah, you're appreciated.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. You know, and
you're elevated even at times.
Yeah, well, totally. And I would say not that I'm not appreciated at work as much. I mean, at home as much, but I get way more affirmation, way more, appreciated, way more accolades, ministering, pastoring, leading than I do at home. You know, I come home and like, oh, there, dirty diaper.
Yep. You know, get to work, roll up your sleeves.
Totally,
totally,
my man.
Get done. Yeah.
And that's
when was the last time you checked the mail?
Yeah, absolutely. And so I don't know. It's I think that's something inwardly. I don't even know how to answer that question. I just know it's there.
Yeah. Well, and here's the reality. I think most of us who are married have spouses who they're great women, but they're just really poor at praising us as men for whatever reason. They just don't do a good job of going, hey, I noticed you did this thing today and I really like that.
And one last thing I wanted to add on to that is there's a David Foster Wallace quote that I'm going to butcher, so I'm not going to try. But essentially he says there's no such thing as an atheist. We all worship something.
Yes. Yeah.
And what we worship defines who we are. And one thing that I've learned, I'm not quite 30 yet, but almost there, in my years of being a man, is that work and success is a really, really cruel God. And you stay your whole life trying to succeed, try to be the next, but there's always going to be somebody else coming in behind you, and there's a beauty to worshiping God and releasing that stuff. And
what's so interesting about that? Like I think about like me growing up and not feeling valued very much. I mean, I'm one of 7 kids.
Sure.
And so one of the latter ones. And this brother was valued for that. Those, this sister was valued for that brother. And I felt like I wasn't valued for much until I discovered I was a performer. I could do something.
Yeah.
And then that's when I felt, man, I'm valued. Well, I can offer someone something. And that has that has been my life. Yeah. And then when it came into ministry, it was like, oh, wow, I'm valued because I can pastor, I can lead, I can teach, I can do all these things, I can speak. And so that's probably, I think, so at the end of the day, it's probably how, and it's this, it's not authentic, it's not real, but oh wow, this is how I'm loved. Wow, this is how, I'm seen.
Yeah.
And so, and at home, there's only 5 people who can see me. There's only 5 people, but out there, the audience is small, and I need a big audience.
Plenty big for you.
Come on, I need a big audience. And so, wow, at the end of the day, I just hearing what you guys, I hear the Holy Spirit saying worship me.
Yes.
If you worship me, you will be satisfied.
Yeah.
And so, and at the end of the day, I'm really honestly worshiping myself.
Yeah.
That's really good. Yeah, and I think too, I think about what you're saying about being a performer, like guess who thinks your performance is commonplace? Your wife.
Yes.
Right? Like we all might laugh like we might be at your house.
Sure,
and you
sure,
say something,
yeah.
we might laugh. She's like, oh, gee, she'll just roll her eyes.
sure.
Like, oh, brother, you know,
Yeah.
kind of thing, right?
She still thinks I'm funny, but you're
At
right.
times.
You're right.
But it's commonplace. It's every day.
No,
right?
totally,
Yeah.
totally.
So she's gotten accustomed to it, right?
Yeah.
Totally.
And,
Maybe if I turn up the song and dance a little bit, I'd be more impressed.
I think, though, and as you talk about worshiping God, I think an aspect of worship for you, Jeff, could literally be like doing a couple things. One, putting a different type of effort into your marriage that maybe Nikki isn't used to in this season of life. And that'll change as seasons go by. We just celebrated 20 years of marriage. Like, I can't keep pulling old tricks out, right? I gotta keep reinventing along in the marriage to keep things fresh. And so I think find things that are like, hey, this, she likes this, or that she'd appreciate this, and do something new and different. But don't look for her to praise you. Then spend time in your worship letting God speak to you about what he sees you as a husband.
Okay.
And what he sees you as a father. Like, what does he see? Let him pray. Let him praise you in that. Let him give you the accolades. Let him say, Jeff, I see this in you.
Yeah.
And I bless this.
Yeah.
I love this about who you are as a man, as a husband, as a father.
Yeah.
Let him encourage you in that. Because as you do that, then what you'll start to do is pick up little nuances of how that's impacting your wife and your children as well. You'll get the subtleties of it, right?
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. Thanks.
How about you, Aurelio?
I'm good.
Yeah,
No, like I think the combination of what Adam and Jeff were talking about really kind of speaks to me this year being hard.
Yeah.
I think for the better part of the year, not being able to find a routine, still being new in a role.
Yeah.
When I've only had a little bit of time to start settling in, and when before success was very easily defined for me.
Yeah.
But what's always been hard about me is I don't enjoy success. It's kind of like by the time people, oh, that was great. And I'm like, yeah, cool. I'm on to the next thing, or I'm 5 miles down the road from that. I just keep myself busy so that I don't need to sit still. And we've talked about this where it's like, how do I sit and enjoy, or just like really look around and see what, I've been blessed with, because I don't slow down long enough. I just keep going. It's like, sure, what's next? Yeah, what are we going to do next? How do I, make that better, and then not even slow down? I don't remember who asked me, and that was the first time it had hit me. Somebody asked me, do you enjoy success? I said, no. Like, an achievement, I don't enjoy it. It's just something that I do. And this year's been really hard because all that was taken away. And so you're balancing 2 little kids at home, learning how to be a homeschool dad. And that thought of work is home is work, no lines.
This idea of wanting to figure out what our identity is and how much shame is mixed up in that, and not being able to sit still, and the fear of, if you actually sat still, what would you find inside yourself?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
And and the only reason I know that is because I do that too. And it doesn't have to be drugs. It could be, video games, TV. It could be good things. It could be helping out at church even,
Right.
Then we just preoccupy ourselves. And I think what I've realized, and what I'd like to share with everybody that I talk to about disciplines, and what I often do, is that the more I do say, you know what, I'm going to trust God and I'm going to do this discipline, I realize more and more his kindness. It's not I feel like he's taking something away from me. Like, man, I can't play video games till midnight, or I can't do whatever I want. But then it's like, I'm so much more fulfilled. I'm still, my anxiety goes down. Still anxious, but it goes down. And there's the circle, the missing piece, the circle gets completed a little bit more. It's what we need. He knows what we need, but it's like kids, man. They they don't want to listen, just like we don't want to listen. And that fear of sitting still it's a gateway for a lot of bad decisions. And when I look at my life, some of the worst decisions I made were at times that I was bored, and didn't want to sit still and think about things.
Yeah. That's really good, man. That's really, I think, a really critical observation on your part, man. That's really, really good. I wonder, too, as I think about your background being law enforcement, Like I wonder with all the things that you saw and experienced in law enforcement, what would have happened to you if you had spent time just sitting still and processing that stuff?
Man, well.
Oh yeah, I probably would have quit.
Yeah.
Because I think about, somebody asked me, what was it? Do you remember your first day at work? And I go, yeah. I remember going to the first radio call. It was a 911 hang up and having such an adrenaline rush to go to such a nothing call. Now I look back at it and it was just nothing, that I couldn't even get out of the car. I tripped, my seatbelt caught my baton and then my gun, and I ate it in the street, and then just shaking like a leaf. And then you get so used to the adrenaline dump that's the constant state that you live in.
Wow.
And then you get promoted.
Yeah.
And then those assignments start building in intensity. You go from financial crimes to then working child abuse.
Yeah, I was gonna say you're doing child abuse.
And feeling like I can't turn my phone off.
Yeah.
Like I was a self-admitted workaholic at that point. It was like, no, it's important work.
Yeah.
Because when I'm not showing up at work, this is continuing. So you have this pull. And then it was constant.
Yep.
Union stuff, everything else that I had mixed in there. Yeah, there was no time to sit still. And I feel like I'm still sprinting, but I don't know what I'm sprinting to.
Yep.
I had a good friend do a ride along with me, and he goes, it feels like we're rushing everywhere, and I don't know what we're rushing to.
Wow.
I go, yeah, that kind of is how my life feels. And when you start that routine at 22, 23, that's all I knew for 15 years.
Yep. Wow. Yep. Yeah, I think what Tyler said, like if you sit still long enough, what are you going to find there? And I
There's
think
stuff I don't want to find.
Yeah,
Right.
and I think
Right.
Yeah, you've grown in the habit of just rushing and staying busy and keeping that wheel going, because if you stop it or slow it down, suddenly something's going to pop up that maybe you don't want to deal with. Like I can't deal with that, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, maybe even for you, Julio, maybe some of that might be maybe some professional help, even just to kind of post-process some of that stuff, and to realize too that yes, ministry is hard, it's difficult, but man, there's so much good there too if we actually slow down and we listen to God and we take the time, to step into it. It's like, man, what an amazing experience we get to have. Like, just think about today. You've been out in this incredible place, and it's caused you to slow down and just be in it and just enjoy activities and just even the different smell of the air. It smells different up here, right?
I didn't enjoy all the activity.
Amen. You conquered, bro. Come on. Yeah. Thanks for that. What about you, Buggy?
Yeah, I mean, this year for me is all about grief. And COVID's got nothing on grief for sure for me personally. I feel the desire to escape all the time, because the pain is just really hard to deal with. And, I can function in everyday life. I can have fun. I can have good conversations. I can enjoy things. But being in ministry is not easy when all I want to do is be taken care of emotionally. And I'm primarily taking care of other people emotionally. And I've been tempted multiple times to just leave and do something easy, something that's numbers that I don't have to feel or think. And then wrestling with the fact that God's called me to ministry, and He has not released me from that call. And that's my response to what I feel. And just escape to just be on vacation all the time, I want to be doing something other than regular life, because regular life's just really hard. Every day in my house, I'm reminded that we're not a family of 4 and we're a family of 3. Losing Noble is constantly there. It's just in my face. I think about it every day, multiple times a day. And even though I handle it better than I did 9 months ago, it's like my life, and that's something that I'm trying to accept as my new reality.
I'd love to hear from you. What have you found to be helpful in dealing with your grief? I know. You alluded a little bit to wanting to escape from it. Maybe I'll just leave ministry and go do something else, or I'll just want to go on vacation. I'll escape and go do that. But what have you found to be helpful as you've sort of dealt with one of the most tragic things a parent could ever deal with?
Yeah. Well, the opposite of escape, it's deal with it, you know. It's intentionally grieve, whether that's sitting in Noble's room and remembering him, looking at pictures, talking about it, you know. I've shared a little bit with you about how important it is for me to have those conversations and invite people in to the painful places. And and the release, even if it makes me cry, it makes me feel vulnerable or weak. Not weak in the sense that I'm bad, but just like I'm uncovered, you know, I'm undone. That it's actually good for me, and I actually feel better when I do.
Have you noticed your body after a good cry, like you feel differently inside?
Yeah, totally. And for me, I think I shared this the other day, is worship has been kind of that place for me where I can just let it all out. It's me and Jesus, and it's me not just pouring out my emotions on the surface, but my soul to him, and grabbing hold of his promises, and believing that Noble's with Jesus, believing the things that we say as pastors all the time to people to comfort them, but I have to wrestle with the truth of those. And sometimes it's at a soul level. It's not even like my mind thinking through it. It's just trusting God with those deep hurt places. So yeah, it's been really helpful.
And it's so great that you've self-identified that worship is a great practice for you. In the midst of a pain that not many people can understand. Like, we can get our mind around it a little bit, but to feel it, like you've been able to go to this place and go, even in the midst of this excruciating pain that just won't go away, you know, I can continue to worship. I can continue to look to God. And I think, you know, really what you're doing, you're modeling Jesus on the cross. Like he continued to worship the Father, even though his darkest moment, you know. And so what an invitation for you in your worship to come right up alongside of Jesus and spend time with him. And be like, he gets it.
Yeah.
He absolutely gets it, you know. And in your worship, it takes you right there to him, you know.
Yeah. And like, that's like what you're talking about, Bogey, is boiled down, bare bones. Why are we doing any of this, right?
Right.
Do I want to be a better person? Do I want to look better? No, all we have is that hope.
Yeah.
And that's it.
So, yeah.
And like, you're just at that, like, the heart of why this is so important. Because there's guys in our lives that struggle with all this stuff that we're talking about, but they don't have, you know, they have the TV or the radio or, you know, a six-pack to go to. They don't have that hope. And what gets me is that even in the church, men are like, you know, like, I'll go to church on Sunday. Like, bro, we have the gospel.
Yes, sir.
We have hope.
Yes, my man.
And not just hope, the only hope.
Yeah. Amen.
And like, in this year, we've seen the entire world stop. Everyone's wearing masks and just everything, right? But the gospel has not changed. The gospel is all we have. It's that baseline. And us as men, it's our duty, it's our job to spread that.
Yeah.
And it's our duty to help each other spread that, to talk these things through, to help each other with these disciplines. Because if we're doing these disciplines just so we can look better or feel better, it's a waste of time.
Yeah. Yeah. And New Testament says somewhere something like that faith's the anchor of our soul. And, you know, it's not until you are willing to, you know, this for me was thrust upon me.
Right.
But for every man, there's something that, you know, these guys have shared, and there's probably many more things we could dig up that would war against our faith if we allowed it to. And so the suffering, the struggle is actually us anchoring ourselves with faith in God, that we're entrusting ourselves to him in a real way that actually means something. And so for me in my grieving, it's I can talk about God's faithfulness all day long, but do I believe He's faithful when I lose a 12-year-old boy? You know, like that's real, and that's painful. And He's not any less faithful, but I have to wrestle with that, and that's the hard part. I have to decide if it's real, and I think that's where we get lost is we just give in to our addictions and our preferences and our hobbies and stuff like that because we're not willing to do the work, and the work's painful. And it causes us to decide if we really trust God, and are we going to let Him into those deep places.
And meet Him in those deep places in a way that only we can.
Yeah.
Like you'll know God differently in the midst of your grief.
Yes.
Than you will if this event had never happened.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and man, I know God differently by walking alongside you and seeing you go through this grief. So it just radiates out. And that's what's so beautiful about the gospel and about God is He takes even the worst things and makes them good.
Thanks so much for spending time with us and just asking good questions and speaking into what we can do spiritually. So appreciate you guys taking the time. It's good to have people in your life that will press in and get below the surface. So we got one more stop. So thanks for the time. We're going to get some s'mores. So let's grab some grub.
You guys.
Thank you.
When I think about my time,
Oh man,
Where are you gonna sit?
s'mores.
Where the smoke is not.
Okay.
Smoke's kind of going this way.
I'll take.
you want this?
You know, why don't you get
I'll
that?
take this one. I'll take this one.
Ooh, the graham.
Are these cinnamon?
I don't know, man.
Cinnamon or regular?
Cinnamon.
So guys, today's been quite a day. We've had a lot of pretty intense conversations, yeah?
Yeah.
So I was thinking it'd be good just before we, head back home to make some like commitments.
Milk chocolate. That was my nickname in high school.
Tell us more, Jeff. So to talk about like what we're gonna commit to, maybe it's a commitment in our relationship with God, or
Thank you.
as a husband or father or pastor, and just kind of share something that's kind of standing out for you as we've had all these conversations.
Jeff, you know what yours is, don't you, bud?
I do? Well, thank you,
Because you told him what it was.
I did. I guess I did.
Adam,
He was struggling
Adam
with-
told you what it was.
What his takeaway was, and so I said, I'll be your Holy Spirit. I know what you need to change, dog.
One of the things I've loved about, as you guys discuss, I'll just jump in and answer your question.
Yeah, right, there you go.
Make sure, I think one of the things we talked about earlier was like, what's the hope for our men in the church? And I think about what it took for me to end up in community, like in good community. Like it literally took me destroying what it felt like everything before God got me to the point of like, hey, you can't just rely on yourself. Like you need me.
Yeah.
But wanting to be there for our men in those situations before they get there. And so, really being more declarative in how, in the action steps to reach them. Like, what are those things that we need to do? How do we make it okay? And I think like with today, being vulnerable about a lot of things and being open with like, hey, yeah, we have these struggles too. Because I think it can be really intimidating when you just expect the person up on stage or in the lobby or the one everyone talks to, like that they have their crap together.
Right.
When it's not always that case. And we struggle with those things too. Yeah, I'd say for home, just the need for grace. And I would say not even so much for myself, but my wife. When I think I'm the only one struggling with things, I forget that along with me comes, a wife, a couple kids, everyone else. But just having that grace for her, like, hey, yeah, there are things that we both struggle with, and we just struggle with them in different ways. And that's something I really need to work on. Patience, understanding. It feels like it's going to be a forever battle. Have some graham crackers.
So if you had to like make that commitment tangible,
Yeah.
what would that look like if you're saying, I'm going to do this particular thing? Like, so grace is good, but like, how will you know if you're succeeding?
I think she'll tell me.
What if you tell her what you're committing to?
And I think that's the big first step, is being able to say it out loud, right? To her. Like, hey, and being open to, tell me where I fall short in my commitment to you.
Do you think, what do you think her response would be to it?
I think her jaw's going to drop.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. No, I think there's going to be good conversation around it. She's going to be excited to know, like, hey, are we really... Because it feels like at times we talk at each other more than talk to each other. And that's...
That'll preach.
That's something we need to...
another one of these.
Yeah. Need to work on.
So you're going to tell her, hey, I'm going to be more gracious toward you, and I want you to tell me if I'm not.
Yeah. And not ask her for anything in return.
That's right.
It hit me most when we were having the conversation with Tony about how many men feel isolated, alone, just because of decisions and choices they've made. But just, like, invite somebody in before you get there. Like, be okay with not being okay to us, right?
I knew this was going to happen.
Yeah, well, you got that sexy beard, dude. You got that Virgil beard.
That's right, it happens. We all have it. He's got some. Jeff's got a little bit on his lip. We're all good.
I just forgot to shake.
You have some on your ear, too. I don't know how that got there.
Just leave it. I wasn't going to tell him till the ride home.
Are you serious?
But like what we talked about a little bit earlier, being able to just experiencing the vision versus talking through it, right?
Right.
So letting the men of our church know, like this vision, we don't just talk about it every week. Like, that is what we live.
Yes, right.
And so wanting them to hear that, as they watch this and go through this, and know that, like, hey, there's a place for grace. We will have it for you. Like, we want to be a part of whatever it is that you're going through before it ruins you.
And I want to know how you felt about being in the mountains today.
Man.
All that camping you did in there?
It's not natural to me at all. I would not. It would be uncomfortable to me if I did not marry my white wife, and that's actually the God honest truth.
Yeah.
She's taken me hiking. We've been camping and all that craziness, and it's good. It's good. It's good.
I feel like you're lying.
Yeah, it's good. Honestly, guys, no, it's been great because it's helped me to just kind of get away and have just real conversations, and so it's really been awesome.
Good.
And so, and my wife allowed me to come up here to hang out with you guys, so that's been good. How can I just kind of be there more for my wife? I'm there for so many other people. For so many other people, I give all of me to so many, because I'm a pastor. This is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Right.
But like my wife and my kids get like just the rest. And so how can I be there for my wife? How can I just love her, care for her the way the way that she needs me to?
How would you like make that tangible?
Why do you have to
like
ask questions like that?
Is it like a date night? Is it like a date night once a week? Is it?
I would say the first thing that comes to my mind is words affirming her, telling her, honey, I thank you so much. It's interesting because we read in the New Testament, Paul says, husbands, love your wives, and I just think of how often, like, am I really loving my wife? And if you love someone, you do something that fulfills them. I think I should be doing this because this is obviously what she wants. It's probably not what she wants. Sometimes she just wants me to be there, to be present, to have a conversation, and to send her text throughout the day. I'm texting and emailing, slacking all these other people all day long. And if I am sending her a message throughout the day, it's something logistical.
Yeah.
It's business,
Yeah.
And so how can I just say, hey, honey,
Don't forget the grapes.
Don't
forget the grapes.
Hey, honey, I love you. Hey, honey, thinking about you. Hey, honey, I'm so glad that you're the mother of my children, of our children. The other one, speaking of kids, man, I just to calm the freak down when it comes to my kids. I am so I'm so rigid, I'm so structured, I'm so just, it's got to be this way. And when something does go differently, to be like, they're freaking kids, man.
Yeah.
They're kids, like, right? They're supposed to be learning. They're supposed to not have it together. And so just to kind of calm down when it comes to my kids and to allow them to fail, allow them to mess up. Yeah, which it honestly, it goes against my flipping grain.
Yeah.
I think I need a whole emotional, mental, spiritual shift when it comes to my kids. Honestly, if I just fix that would probably fix more than half of the issues I possibly might have with my wife. You know, sometimes a lot of our arguments are about like just how we parent differently, and how I'm like, just kind of like the way I am with my kids, and and it's not horrible, I just get more frustrated. I react rather than respond. My heart for the men, the freaking man up.
What's that mean?
Oh my gosh. To be men of God, I've worked in 3-4 different Christian universities. I've worked at probably four different churches, and everywhere I go, the women are doing everything. They are really leading. You may have the lead pastor, a male, but everything else is being led by women. Oh, wow, these couple of pastors are male, but like who's running the church and who's filling the seats are women. And I just feel like, and listen to me, I'm not saying, are you kidding me? Do you know my wife? Like, I have no problem with women being in leadership, but I'm just saying we're so pathetic. We really are. We're really pathetic. We're the last ones to kind of go to church. We're the last ones to read the Bible. We're the last ones to lead our kids biblically. What's amazing? My wife is so strong as a leader. And if you guys know her, like, she is a machine. She's a powerhouse. In a lot of ways, she knows the Bible more than I do. But it's something about her. She has this desire for me to like lead the family, And I'm telling you, when you know my wife, like, she is a leader on her own, but it's something about her desiring me to like lead our family when it comes, to things spiritual.
Yeah.
You be the first one to lift your hands in worship. You be the first one, to say, hey, we're going to church, right? I mean, you be the first one to say, hey, we're going to start memorizing Bible verses. But it's the opposite. It's the men are usually the last.
Yeah, I think as we talk, the personal takeaway is, and this one's been there for a while, it's not a new realization, but I think it's more putting the rubber to the road with the commitment of like, what am I going to do about it? What am I going to speak to you guys that, a week or month from now, you can be like, hey, are you doing this or whatever? And I think it really comes back to some of the anger piece, some of the father stuff we talked about as it relates to my second son, Aiden, who's 15, and who him and I just butt heads a lot. And so he doesn't show that he needs or wants time with me. Like, he's good. Like, he's very strong-willed, independent. Like, he doesn't need me, but he does.
Yeah.
And so there's been a couple of things that he's expressed interest in, and I know that one-on-one time with him is significant, and my opportunity to invest in those kinds of ways are waning, because it's a few years from flying the coop or whatever. And so I'd love to, even as we talked about how sometimes there's moments where like our anger is righteous or it moves the needle. Like, sometimes he needs, like, he's the kind of kid who actually needs the hard love sometimes.
Yeah, sure.
And when he gets the metaphorical slap in the face, he typically actually responds well and does better for that. But if that's absent of, or there's a vacuum of the relational care and the connection and the time, because he's not going to ask for it. And I just need to know that that's there for him and step out in that way. So that's my personal takeaway.
That's great, man.
And then for men of the church, just my hope is if you are in a place that you don't want to be, if you're one of these guys that's stuck, if whether it's a sinful habit, an unhealthy thought life, and it could even be something we wouldn't even categorize as sinful. Maybe you have slipped into depression. 2020 has gotten to you, and you haven't shown it yet for whatever reason. My literal simple call to action challenge is just tell someone that you trust where you're really at. Open up the closet and let them see the darkness, like that secret, that shameful thing that you're afraid of sharing. Just share it with someone that you trust, and someone that you know walks with Jesus, who can respond with the grace that we've talked about, who can respond with safety, who can respond with affirmation and love and care, because it can be the beginning of a lifetime of abundant life on the other side of that. But I think it's usually, I typically say the first step's the hardest step. Like once you've taken the first step, the sort of momentum typically builds. And so.
Yeah, that's good. Appreciate that. Yeah, I think on a personal level, just related to what I shared before, is I need to intentionally share about how I'm feeling about Noble at least once a week. Probably more than once a week.
Okay.
Just to, whether I'm asked or I'm volunteering the information, and probably allow emotions to be attached to that. I know that's important. I know that I like to help others. I like to invest in others. God made me strong, but He didn't make me strong enough, so strong that I couldn't need other people, and I need to open myself up to that.
Yeah, totally.
And there's freedom in that. So that's my big thing. So I'll say twice a week. I think that's probably the right number. And for the men of the church, man, the reason we're doing this whole day is because I have this hope that at some point every man will realize how much he needs other men next to him.
Yeah, amen.
And
amen.
Most of us resist it for so long because we're so afraid of looking bad, or we're so insecure, or we're so ashamed of what we've done in the past, and we just don't want to lift the lid to everything that's below the surface.
Yeah.
And this is a few hours for you guys, for those who are watching, a whole day for us. We could have done 10 times as much. I mean, once you lift the lid, man, there's infinite things to talk about.
Yeah.
And God works when you open yourself up. God works through others. He encourages us. He challenges us. He changes us through our relationship with other people. Man, that's just my hope for every man, is that they would go, all right, I've heard this a lot of times. I've watched it happen with you guys. And this is just, again, scratching the surface. I'm going to give myself to that process and trust that God's going to meet me there.
Amen. That's right.
And that would be my hope.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and the thing is if you don't know where to start, just ask. Ask one of us.
Yeah.
Ask someone, where to start. I don't know who to go to. I don't know. I don't have that yet. And so, again, because the first step is the hardest step, sometimes you just need to, you don't know the questions asked or the person to go to or whatever. Well, voice that and we'll respond for sure.
Yeah, and if you're someone who's watching, man, you're watching hopefully with somebody else. Talk to the person that you're with, talk to the person at your campus, talk to somebody and say, hey, how do I get involved? How do I get connected to a group? How do I get help for this thing that I'm struggling with? I mean, I think that's just a great way to start. The reason we asked you to watch with other people is because you need other people. And this process is complete by actually having these kind of conversations. So that's my hope. Dude, guys, this has been awesome. It's been so great hanging out today. Seriously, we did so much fun stuff. We had great conversation. It's great.
It's good.
Yeah, I love spending time with you guys. I think it's time to head down the hill.
Surprisingly, I survived.
You did. You survived.
That's right.
The mountain. That's awesome. Good times. Love you guys. Good game.
Love you.
Yeah. Marshmallow handshakes.
Yeah.
Beard stuck together with marshmallow.
You guys just lied to me.
Man, I'm so glad that you joined us for this men's Unconference. It's been an incredible day. I hope that some of our conversations have really helped you think about some things and process some things. And so I want to give you one specific direction. Go to move.sc/unconference. We're going to put everything on there that you might want to know about or need in order to take next steps. So if you're a guy who's struggling with sexual sin and that segment about talking about our struggles in porn, if that stood out to you, you can find out about our men's sexual freedom groups. If you know you need community, if you liked what you saw and realized, man, that looks a little bit uncomfortable, but I know I need that in my life. I need guys that I can be real with. Man, you can get to be a part of a group. You can find out more about community, more about what it looks like to get involved. Maybe some of you just want to help. You want to get more involved at the church. Maybe you're not ready for the face-to-face, but you're ready for shoulder-to-shoulder. We're going to be having a work day at our new Azusa campus on November 20th and 21st. We're going to put information about that. Come swing a hammer. Well, that might be destroying something, but come help in whatever way is needed and really participate, because when men get together, we can build things, we can do great things together. And if you need help of any kind, if you're just struggling, if you're lonely, if you're depressed, whatever's going on in your life, you know that we're here for you. You don't have to be embarrassed. You don't have to be afraid. We're trying to model being real, because it's okay to be real wherever you're at. We want you to share with somebody, and that's why we have you watching with other people, connecting with other people. Tell someone right now. Tell the people you're with, hey, I got to get this off my chest. I got to share this thing. I've been thinking about it all day. I'm nervous. Don't waste the moment. God is pointing you toward that. He's pushing you to do that, and make sure you do that. And if for some reason you're watching this by yourself, man, call somebody up that you know and say, hey, I need to be more intentional. I need friendship. I need connection. I need to grow in that way. So whatever it is that you need, I want to encourage you to go to move.sc/unconference. That's our page for everything regarding this unconference. We want you to get connected, take those next steps. So glad you joined us. We love you. We're praying for you. God bless you guys.